You've been taught to believe that every delay means something is wrong, that when life slows down, when answers don't come, when doors stay closed, it must be rejection, failure, or something slipping away. But if that were true, why do so many things you once chased later reveal themselves as mistakes? Why do some of your greatest reliefs come from what never happened? The truth is, not every delay is a denial. Some delays are protection. Some pauses are guidance. Some closed doors are life quietly stepping in before you walk into something not meant for you. Buddhist wisdom has always pointed to this. The mind suffers when it demands immediate answers, when it clings to outcomes, when it tries to force life to move on its own timeline. But peace begins when you trust that there is a deeper order, even when you cannot see it. Tonight, as you listen to these lessons, something will begin to shift. Your resistance will soften. Your need to control will loosen. The weight of uncertainty will start to lift. And slowly, you will begin to see delays not as punishment, but as protection. Not as loss, but as quiet redirection towards something more aligned. This is not just something to listen to before sleep. This is a shift in how you understand everything that has ever been delayed in your life. Are you ready? Let's begin. And this is where the first deep shift begins, because before a person can trust delay, that person must first understand why the mind fears it so much. Most suffering around timing does not come from life itself. It comes from the story the mind tells when life does not move fast enough. What hurts is not only the pause. What hurts is the meaning attached to the pause. And once that meaning is questioned, something powerful begins to happen. The panic starts to weaken. The inner noise starts to slow. A different kind of seeing begins to rise. There is a quiet pain that many people carry but rarely name. It is the pain of feeling behind. The pain of watching life move and thinking it is moving correctly for everyone else, but not for you. It is the pressure that rises when something has not happened yet, and the mind begins to whisper that maybe it never will. That whisper can become very loud. It can shape your mood, your confidence, your sleep, even your sense of worth. A delay that began as a simple pause becomes a personal wound because the mind does not know how to leave timing alone. It turns time into judgment. It turns waiting into danger. It turns uncertainty into a threat. This is where the timing illusion begins. The mind often mistakes urgency for truth. Something feels urgent, so the mind assumes it must also be important, accurate, and final. If something has not happened by now, the mind concludes that something is wrong. If the answer has not come yet, the mind decides that the answer must be no. If the door has not opened yet, the mind assumes it never will. And because these thoughts arrive with emotional force, they feel believable. The body tightens, the heart grows restless. The imagination fills the silence with fear. Soon, the feeling of urgency becomes so intense that it no longer feels like fear at all. It feels like reality. But it is not reality. It is interpretation. Urgency is one of the mind's favorite disguises. It dresses fear in the clothes of logic. It says, act now, decide now, panic now, fix this now, or else something precious will be lost forever. And when this happens often enough, a person starts living as if every pause is a crisis. This is exhausting. It drains peace from ordinary life. It teaches the nervous system to react to stillness, as if stillness were danger. Buddhist wisdom gently interrupts this pattern. It does not do so by saying that desire is evil or that planning is wrong. It simply asks a deeper question. What is really happening right now? And what is the mind adding to it? That question changes everything. What is happening right now may simply be that something has not happened yet. That is all. But the mind adds layers. It says it is too late. It says others are ahead. It says this pause means failure. It says the future is closing. It says your chance is disappearing. And because the mind repeats these thoughts with confidence, you begin to treat them as facts. Yet most of them are guesses. Many are distortions. Some are old fears speaking with a fresh voice. The timing illusion becomes stronger when you build your life around invisible deadlines. By a certain age, this should happen. By this month, that should happen. By now, I should be further ahead. These sentences seem harmless at first, but they become tools of suffering when they are held too tightly. They create private clocks that life never agreed to follow. Then, when life moves according to its own rhythm, disappointment appears. Not because something real has been stolen, but because expectation has been violated. This is one of the most painful habits of the modern mind. It confuses the schedule in your head with the wisdom of life itself. A fruit picked too early does not become sweeter because you were impatient. A wound forced closed before it has healed will open again. A lesson skipped does not disappear. It returns later, often with more force. In the same way, the things you want in life are not always delayed because they are absent. Sometimes they are delayed because they are not ripe. Sometimes you are not ripe. Sometimes the situation is not ready. Sometimes what appears to be standing still is actually aligning in ways you cannot yet measure. But the mind hates what it cannot measure. It wants visible movement. It wants proof. It wants signs it can point to and say, "There, now I can relax." Yet much of life's most important work happens without spectacle. Trust grows quietly. Maturity grows quietly. Readiness grows quietly. Clarity grows quietly. Inner strength grows quietly. These things are often developing underneath the surface, while the mind complains that nothing is happening. That complaint is one of the great tragedies of human life. So much is happening, but because it does not match the speed or shape you expected, you call it nothing. There is also another reason the mind mistakes urgency for truth. It is deeply attached to relief. It believes that if this one thing happens quickly, then peace will finally arrive. If the message comes, if the money appears, if the relationship starts, if the plan works, then this tension inside will finally disappear. So the mind turns the desired outcome into a false savior. It gives it too much power. It says peace is on the other side of getting what I want. And because of that belief, delay becomes unbearable. Not only do you want the thing, you think you need it in order to breathe properly again. This is where trust begins to collapse. Because the more your peace depends on immediate outcomes, the more threatened you feel by any pause. Delay no longer feels neutral. It feels like life is withholding oxygen, and once that happens, even wise people start making unwise decisions. They force relationships that should have ended. They accept opportunities that do not fit. They return to places they have outgrown. They chase what shines, not what aligns. Why? Because urgency has convinced them that movement matters more than truth. But movement is not always progress. Sometimes the fastest path leads straight into confusion. Sometimes what arrives quickly leaves quickly. Sometimes what is gained through panic is later lost through pain. There are things you can only see clearly when life refuses to rush for you. Delay reveals the hidden shape of things. It exposes motives. It shows cracks. It reveals whether your desire is rooted in wisdom or fear. It teaches you whether you actually want what you are chasing, or whether you simply want the discomfort of waiting to end. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Many people are not chasing the thing itself. They are chasing the end of uncertainty. They are tired of waiting, tired of not knowing, tired of feeling suspended between where they are and where they hope to be. So they cling to outcomes because outcomes seem like escape. But Buddhist wisdom teaches something radical here. The end of suffering does not come from controlling timing. It comes from seeing clearly through the mind's attachment to timing. When you begin to notice this, your whole inner world starts to change. You realize that a delayed answer is not the same as a ruined future. You realize that not knowing is not the same as being lost. You realize that something taking time is not proof that it is wrong. Slowly, the spell of urgency weakens, and when urgency weakens, perception improves. Now you can ask better questions. Instead of asking, "Why is this not happening yet?" you begin to ask, "What is being shown by this delay?" Instead of asking, "What am I losing?" you ask, "What am I being protected from?" Instead of asking, "How do I force movement?" you ask, "What is misaligned here?" Misalignment is often invisible when desire is loud. When you want something badly, you stop noticing the signs that it may not fit. You ignore the tension in your body. You overlook the inconsistencies. You silence your deeper knowing because the surface promise is too attractive. But delay interrupts this. It creates distance between you and the object of desire, and in that distance, truth has room to speak. Sometimes the misalignment is external. The opportunity looks good, but the environment is unstable. The relationship feels exciting, but the other person lacks depth, honesty, or peace. The plan seems solid, but it is built on the wrong values. In these cases, delay keeps you from stepping into what would eventually hurt you. If things moved at the speed your fear demanded, you might walk straight into a life that does not fit your soul. Sometimes the misalignment is internal. You want something beautiful, but the part of you chasing it is not yet healed. You are looking for love, but loneliness is choosing for you. You are seeking success, but insecurity is driving the vehicle. You are asking for change, but you are still carrying habits that would sabotage that change once it arrives. In these moments, delay becomes a mirror. It does not only withhold, it reveals. It says, "Look again, look deeper, see what is still unsteady in you. See what still needs tenderness, discipline, honesty, or release." This is not punishment, it is mercy. A mind trapped in urgency cannot recognize mercy when it arrives in the form of slowness. It only sees obstruction. But slowness has intelligence. It stretches your seeing. It exposes what speed would have hidden. It gives time for illusions to dissolve. It makes room for wisdom to catch up with desire. There are many moments in life that only become understandable in reverse. At the time, you call them delays. Later, you call them protection. At the time, you call them missed chances. Later, you call them rescue. At the time, you grieve what did not happen. Later, you thank life for what it prevented. This happens so often that it should humble the mind. Yet the mind keeps repeating the same old story. This delay is wrong. This pause is bad. This stillness means something is broken. It rarely learns until suffering teaches it again. One of the deepest forms of wisdom is learning sooner. Learning while the delay is still happening. Learning before the outcome changes. Learning to sit in the pause without immediately turning it into a tragedy. This is not passivity. It is not laziness. It is not pretending not to care. It is the discipline of refusing to let fear interpret everything first. That discipline is powerful because it returns you to reality. Maybe the only truth right now is that something is taking longer than you expected. That is very different from the stories the mind creates. It means you can breathe. You do not need to solve your whole future tonight. You do not need to condemn your path because one answer has not arrived. You do not need to let one silent season define your worth. The timing illusion also feeds on comparison. It grows stronger when you constantly measure your life against the visible progress of others, their relationship, their job, their money, their confidence, their momentum. You see the surface and assume they are on time while you are behind. But comparison is blind to complexity. You do not know what timing is protecting you from. You do not know what burden another person's speed is hiding. You do not know what lessons your path requires that theirs does not. Yet the mind compares anyway, and in doing so, it deepens your dissatisfaction with your own unfolding. Buddhist thought has long warned against this restless habit of measuring and grasping. The more you build your identity around outcomes and timelines, the more fragile your peace becomes. Peace that depends on conditions is always unstable, but peace rooted in awareness becomes less dependent on when things happen. It allows you to act with sincerity, effort, and clarity, while releasing the demand that life obey your private schedule. This is not easy at first, especially if you have lived for years believing that speed equals value. Many people have trained themselves to think that fast means good, immediate means right, delayed means failure, but life keeps proving otherwise. Fast can be shallow, immediate can be reckless, delayed can be wise, slow can be sacred. A tree with deep roots does not apologize for growing slowly. A river does not feel ashamed when it bends. The moon does not rush to become full in one night. Nature is full of reminders that timing is not a flaw. Timing is part of the design. Human beings suffer because they forget they are part of that same design. They demand that their healing be instant, their purpose be obvious, their growth be visible, their answers be immediate. And when life does not cooperate, they think something has gone wrong. But often, nothing has gone wrong. Something deeper is happening. The inner ground is being prepared. The false path is being exposed. The wrong door is staying closed long enough for your vision to sharpen. In many cases, the delay itself is the teaching. It teaches you what still controls you. It reveals how quickly fear takes over your thinking. It shows you how attached you are to certainty. It uncovers how often you link your worth to visible progress. It confronts the part of you that says, if I cannot have the future now, then the present has no value. That part of you needs compassion, but it also needs truth. Because the present is not empty just because it is not yet what you hoped for. There is work here too. There is learning here too. There is life here too, and when you start living that way, delay loses its ability to humiliate you. Waiting no longer feels like proof of inadequacy. It becomes part of the path itself. This is where trust begins to grow, not as a vague idea, but as a lived experience. Trust is what happens when you stop treating every unanswered desire as a threat. Trust is what happens when you let silence remain silence without forcing it to mean abandonment. Trust is what happens when you continue walking, continue growing, continue listening, even when the next step is not fully revealed. The mind wants guarantees before it relaxes. But trust learns to relax before guarantees arrive. That is why trust is spiritual strength. It does not depend on immediate evidence. It grows in the space where evidence is incomplete. It stays soft when fear wants to harden. It stays open when control wants to close. It says, maybe this delay is not here to harm me. Maybe it is here to help me see what urgency would have made invisible. And once you begin seeing that, even a painful pause becomes meaningful. Not pleasant, always. Not easy, always. But meaningful. Meaning changes suffering. It does not erase discomfort, but it transforms your relationship with it. Now the delay is no longer just an empty hallway of frustration. It is a place of refinement, a place where the mind is being retrained, a place where desire is being purified, a place where misalignment is being exposed before it becomes destiny. This is why some of the most important blessings in life arrive slowly. Not because life enjoys withholding joy, but because some things are too important to be given at the speed of panic. Some things need your eyes to clear first. Some things need your heart to steady first. Some things need illusion to fall away first. And some things are delayed because they are trying to meet a wiser version of you. When you truly understand this, you stop begging every door to open. You stop assuming every pause is bad news. You stop worshipping urgency. You begin to respect timing. You begin to listen differently. You begin to realize that what feels like stillness on the outside may actually be quiet correction, quiet preparation, quiet care. And that realization changes the emotional climate of your entire life. Because now, when delay appears, you do not have to collapse into the old story. You can pause, you can breathe, you can question the fear before you obey it. You can let the mind speak without handing it full authority. You can remember that urgency is not always truth. You can remember that speed is not always alignment. You can remember that delay may be revealing what desire could not yet see. And from that place, trust becomes possible. Not blind trust, not passive trust, but a grounded, awake, intelligent trust. The kind that acts when action is needed, waits when waiting is wise, and does not mistake emotional pressure for spiritual guidance. The kind that understands that life is not only giving and denying, sometimes it is protecting through timing, sometimes it is saving through slowness, sometimes it is loving you through a pause you do not yet understand. And once that begins to settle into your heart, the fight with time starts to loosen. You stop trying to outrun your own unfolding. You stop treating your path like a race with invisible enemies. You stop assuming that what is delayed has been lost. Instead, you become more attentive, more patient, more honest, more willing to see what the pause is trying to show you. Because not every delay is empty. Some delays are filled with wisdom. Some delays are filled with correction. Some delays are filled with unseen kindness. And some delays arrive because life, in its quiet and patient intelligence, is refusing to let urgency lead you where truth would never take you. And as this understanding settles in, something even deeper begins to reveal itself. Because it is one thing to see that urgency can deceive you, but it is another thing entirely to realize that some delays are not just revealing misalignment, they are actively protecting you from consequences you cannot yet see. When you stop fighting timing, you begin to notice something quiet, almost invisible, moving beneath your life. A kind of hidden intelligence that slows things down at very specific moments. Not randomly, not cruelly, but precisely. There is a quiet tension that comes from not knowing what almost happened, not knowing what life just prevented. Most people only measure life by what they receive. They rarely stop to consider what they were spared from. They count the doors that did not open, but they do not count the damage those doors may have carried behind them. They grieve what did not arrive, but they do not see what was quietly removed from their path. This is where a deeper kind of trust begins to grow. There are outcomes that look beautiful from a distance, but contain consequences that only reveal themselves after you step inside. There are situations that appear to be opportunities, but carry hidden costs that would slowly drain your peace. There are people who seem right at first, but would later create confusion, instability, or emotional harm. There are paths that promise progress, but lead into complexity that you are not prepared to navigate. And in many of these moments, life does something subtle. It delays, not loudly, not dramatically, not in a way that makes it obvious that protection is happening. It simply slows things down. It creates friction. It introduces uncertainty. It causes plans to stall. It shifts timing just enough to interrupt what would have unfolded if everything moved quickly. To the mind, this feels frustrating. It feels like something is going wrong. It feels like you are being held back. But underneath that feeling, something else may be happening. You are being buffered. Karmic buffering is not something most people are aware of because it does not announce itself. It does not say, "I am protecting you." It does not show you the version of your life that would have happened if things moved faster. It simply adjusts the flow in a way that prevents you from stepping into consequences that are not aligned with your growth or your well-being. This kind of protection is difficult to appreciate in real time because it does not come with immediate relief. It often comes with confusion. You may feel stuck. You may feel delayed. You may feel like something is being withheld, but the truth is, something may be being removed. There are countless moments in life where people look back and say something that sounds simple but carries deep meaning. They say, "I am glad that did not happen when I wanted it to." That sentence is often spoken years later, after enough distance has revealed what was hidden at the time. At the time, they felt disappointed. At the time, they felt rejected. At the time, they thought they lost something important, but later they saw clearly, if that had happened when I wanted it to, I would not have been ready. I would have made decisions from fear. I would have entered a situation that would have overwhelmed me. I would have committed to something that would have taken me away from who I needed to become. This is the nature of karmic buffering. It is not about reward or punishment. It is about timing and consequence. It is about understanding that every action, every choice, every path leads to a series of outcomes that extend far beyond what you can immediately see. And sometimes life intervenes not to control you, but to prevent a chain reaction that would have created more suffering than growth. There is a certain humility that begins to form when you recognize this. You begin to accept that you do not see everything. You begin to understand that your perspective is limited to what is visible, what is immediate, what is emotionally charged. But life operates on a wider field. It accounts for things you cannot measure. It responds to patterns you are not aware of. It adjusts outcomes based on variables that are still forming beneath the surface. And because of this, what feels like delay may actually be alignment with a deeper order. There are also moments where you are not only protected from external consequences, but from internal ones. There are choices you could make at a certain stage of your life that would strengthen the wrong parts of you. You might succeed too quickly and build your identity on something fragile. You might receive recognition before you develop stability, and that recognition could distort your sense of self. You might gain access to something powerful, but without the maturity to handle it, it could lead to imbalance. In these cases, delay is not just about what happens around you. It is about what happens within you. It is about ensuring that when something does arrive, it meets a version of you that can receive it without losing balance. Without this buffering, many people get what they want too early and pay for it later. They enter relationships before they understand themselves and those. Relationships become complicated. They chase success before they develop discipline, and that success becomes difficult to maintain. They make decisions from emotional urgency, and those decisions lead to regret that stays with them for years. But when delay is present, something changes. There is time to see more clearly. There is time to question your own motives. There is time to notice what you might have ignored if everything moved faster. This is one of the quiet benefits of karmic buffering. It creates space between impulse and action. It slows down the process just enough for awareness to catch up. And awareness changes everything. When you are aware, you choose differently. You notice things you would have missed. You feel into situations more deeply. You recognize patterns that were previously invisible. You become less reactive and more intentional. Without that space, many choices are made unconsciously, and unconscious choices often lead to unnecessary suffering. Another layer of this buffering is connected to people. There are individuals who enter your life at certain moments for a reason. Some are aligned with your growth, some are not. Some carry lessons, some carry distractions, some bring clarity, some bring confusion. If certain connections form too early, they can pull you into experiences that are not meant for that stage of your life. You may attach to someone who reflects your wounds instead of your truth. You may become involved in dynamics that delay your personal growth instead of supporting it. In these situations, delay acts as a filter. It prevents certain connections from forming too soon. It creates distance where closeness would have led to complication. It allows time for both people to grow or for clarity to emerge that shows the connection was never aligned in the first place. But again, this is rarely obvious in the moment. It feels like missed connection. It feels like something did not work out. It feels like timing was wrong. Yet sometimes wrong timing is exactly what keeps you from walking into the wrong experience. There is also a deeper spiritual dimension to this idea. Life is not only responding to what you consciously choose, it is also responding to patterns, tendencies, and energies that are still active within you. These patterns influence what you are drawn to, how you interpret situations, and what you are ready to handle. If a certain outcome were to arrive while these patterns are still unresolved, it could reinforce them instead of dissolving them. So delay becomes part of a corrective process. It gives you time to see your patterns more clearly. It gives you time to grow beyond them. It gives you time to shift your inner state so that when something does arrive, it does not simply repeat the past in a new form. This is why some opportunities seem to circle back into your life later, but in a different way. You meet a similar situation, but this time you respond differently. You encounter a familiar type of person, but this time you see more clearly. You are offered something that resembles what you once wanted, but now your perspective has changed. That change is not accidental. It is the result of time, experience, and quiet internal work that happened while you thought nothing was moving. Karmic buffering is deeply connected to this kind of transformation. It is not only about preventing harm, it is about preparing you to engage with life in a more conscious way. There is also something important to understand about consequence. Every action creates an effect, but not every effect is immediate. Some consequences take time to unfold, some are delayed, some are subtle, some appear in unexpected ways. If you move too quickly into certain situations, you may not be able to see the full range of consequences that will follow. But when there is delay, there is more time to observe. You begin to notice patterns in other people's experiences. You see how certain paths play out over time. You recognize outcomes that were not visible at the beginning. This awareness allows you to make choices that are not only based on short-term desire, but on long-term understanding. And this is where wisdom begins to replace impulse. Impulse says, take it now. Wisdom says, look deeper. Impulse says, do not miss this chance. Wisdom says, understand what this chance truly contains. Impulse says, this is what you need. Wisdom says, be sure of what you are inviting into your life. Karmic buffering strengthens that wisdom. It gives you the time and space to develop a more complete view of what you are stepping into. Without that space, many people live in cycles. They repeat the same patterns with different details. They move from one experience to another without understanding what connects them. They chase outcomes without recognizing the underlying tendencies that shape those outcomes. But when delay is present, there is an opportunity to break that cycle. There is a chance to pause, reflect, and choose differently. There is also a deeper kind of trust that begins to emerge when you start recognizing these patterns. Trust not in the sense that everything will always go exactly as you want, but trust in the sense that there is a deeper intelligence at work in your life. An intelligence that sees more than you see. An intelligence that sometimes says, not yet, not to deny you, but to protect you. Not to block you, but to guide you. Not to frustrate you, but to refine you. This trust does not come from blind belief. It comes from observation. It comes from noticing how many times what felt like a delay later revealed itself as something necessary. It comes from seeing how often life prevented something that would have led to difficulty. It comes from recognizing that your perspective at the time was incomplete, and that life, in its quiet way, adjusted the path. When you begin to see this, your relationship with delay changes. You no longer react to it with immediate resistance. You become more curious, more patient, more open to the possibility that something unseen is being handled. This does not mean you stop taking action. It does not mean you become passive. It means your actions are no longer driven by panic. They are guided by clarity, and clarity often requires time. Time to see, time to understand, time to grow, time to align. Karmic buffering exists within that time. It is part of the invisible architecture of your life. It is the reason some things do not happen when you expect. It is the reason certain paths close before you walk too far down them. It is the reason some answers take longer to arrive. And although it may not always feel comforting in the moment, it carries a quiet form of care. A care that does not rush you into situations that would harm you. A care that does not allow your life to unfold in ways that would deepen confusion. A care that respects your growth, your readiness, and your long-term well-being. And when you begin to trust this, even slightly, something changes inside you. The urgency softens, the frustration eases, the need to control every outcome begins to loosen, and in that space, a different kind of strength appears. A strength that does not depend on everything happening immediately. A strength that can wait without collapsing. A strength that understands that sometimes what is not happening is just as important as what is. Because not every delay is empty. Some delays are protection in motion. Some delays are life stepping in quietly, adjusting your path before you even realize there was danger ahead. And some delays are the reason you are still moving forward, even when you thought something important was being taken away, when in truth, something harmful may have just been removed. And as this begins to settle, another layer quietly reveals itself, because it is one thing to be protected from what is outside of you. But there are moments when life is not shielding you from the world, it is preparing you within it. Not every delay is about the situation being wrong. Sometimes the delay exists because the version of you who can hold that life has not fully formed yet. And this is where the deepest kind of protection begins to unfold, not around you, but inside you. There is a quiet discomfort that comes from wanting something deeply and not having it yet. Not because the desire is wrong, but because it feels so real, so close, so necessary. It feels like if it arrived now, everything would finally settle. The tension would ease, the waiting would end, the uncertainty would disappear. And the mind builds a story around this. It says, I am ready. I have waited enough. I deserve this now. But readiness is not measured by desire. This is where most people misunderstand their own lives. They believe that wanting something strongly means they are prepared for it. They believe that because they have thought about it, dreamed about it, worked toward it, they are automatically capable of sustaining it. But life does not only respond to how much you want something, it responds to who you are when it arrives. And this is where the protection of incomplete readiness begins to make sense. There are things that, if given to you too early, would not remain blessings. They would become pressure. They would become confusion. They would become something you struggle to hold together. Not because you are incapable, but because you are not yet stabilized in the way that situation requires. This is not failure. It is timing aligned with growth. There are people who enter relationships too early in their emotional journey. They want love, but they have not yet learned how to sit with themselves. They want connection, but they are still driven by fear of being alone. And when the relationship arrives, it does not bring peace. It brings attachment, insecurity, and misunderstanding. The relationship itself is not the problem. The timing is. There are people who achieve success before they build discipline. They receive attention, recognition, or opportunity, but they have not yet developed the habits that sustain those things. At first it feels exciting, but over time the lack of foundation begins to show. Stress increases, stability decreases. What once felt like a breakthrough becomes something difficult to maintain. There are people who gain resources before they learn responsibility. They are given access to more than they can manage, and instead of growth, it creates imbalance. Decisions become impulsive, focus becomes scattered. What could have been used wisely is consumed quickly. In each of these situations, the problem is not the thing itself. The problem is that it arrived before the person was ready to carry it. This is why delay can be a form of deep protection. It is not withholding what you want. It is making sure that when it arrives, it does not collapse under the weight of who you are at that moment. There is a difference between receiving something and being able to keep it. Many people receive things in life. Fewer people are able to sustain them. And the difference between those two experiences is not luck. It is readiness. Readiness is quiet. It is not loud like desire. It does not rush. It does not demand. It builds slowly. It strengthens your ability to stay steady when things change. It deepens your understanding so that you do not react from fear. It shapes your character so that what you receive does not become something you lose. And this shaping takes time. While you are waiting, something is being built that you cannot always see. Your patience is expanding. Your emotional responses are being refined. Your awareness is becoming sharper. Your ability to handle complexity is increasing. You are learning how to remain balanced even when things do not go your way. This is the foundation that many people skip. They want the outcome without the internal structure to hold it. They want the result without the discipline that sustains it. They want the experience without the maturity that understands it. But life does not operate that way for long. Even if something arrives early, it will eventually test you. And if the foundation is not there, it begins to shake. Delay prevents this. It ensures that when something does come into your life, it meets a version of you that can remain steady, not only when things are good, but when things become challenging. There is also a deeper truth here that many people resist. You are not the same person you were a year ago, and you will not be the same person a year from now. Growth is constantly happening, even when it feels slow, even when it feels invisible, even when it feels like nothing is changing. But change is happening, and certain experiences require a specific version of you. If they arrive too early, they connect with an older version of you, one that may not be able to handle them in a healthy way. But when they arrive at the right time, they meet a version of you that has already learned, already grown, already adjusted. This is why some things feel different when they finally happen. It is not only because the situation has changed, it is because you have changed. And that change allows you to experience the same type of opportunity in a completely different way. There is also a form of protection that exists in how your identity is formed over time. If you receive something before you understand yourself, you may build your identity around that thing. You may begin to define yourself by it. You may attach your worth to it, and when that thing changes, or leaves, or becomes unstable, your sense of self begins to collapse with it. But when you take time to understand who you are, independent of what you have, something different happens. You build a stable center. You develop a sense of self that is not easily shaken. So when things come into your life, they do not define you. They become part of your experience, not the foundation of your identity. This is a different kind of strength. It allows you to engage with life without becoming lost in it. And this strength often comes from time, from reflection, from experience, from the quiet work that happens while you feel like you are waiting. There are also lessons that can only be learned through delay. Lessons about patience, about trust, about letting go of control, lessons about not forcing outcomes, about not attaching your peace to timing, about not rushing into things just to escape uncertainty. These lessons are not easy. They challenge the part of you that wants immediate results. They confront the part of you that feels uncomfortable with not knowing. They slow down the part of you that wants to move quickly just to feel safe. But these lessons are necessary, because without them, you carry that same impatience into everything you receive. And impatience has a way of destabilizing even the best situations. When you are impatient, you rush decisions. You overlook details. You react instead of respond. You expect things to move at the speed of your expectations, and when they do not, frustration builds. But when you have learned patience, something changes. You move with more awareness. You allow things to unfold. You respond with clarity instead of reacting from fear. You understand that growth has its own pace, and you respect it. This creates a different experience of life. It makes everything more stable, more grounded, more sustainable. And this stability is part of what delay is preparing you for. There is also a deeper emotional aspect to this. Sometimes you are not ready to receive something because you are still carrying unresolved emotions. You may still be holding on to past experiences that have not been fully processed. You may still be reacting to old patterns. You may still be influenced by beliefs that limit how you see yourself and the world. If something new enters your life while these emotions are still active, it can become entangled with them. Instead of being a fresh experience, it becomes filtered through old wounds. Instead of creating growth, it may reinforce patterns you are trying to move beyond. But when there is time, there is space to work through these things. There is space to heal. There is space to understand yourself more deeply. There is space to release what no longer serves you. And when you do this, you become more available for what is coming, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. This availability is what allows you to receive something fully without distortion, and this is something that cannot be rushed. There is also something important to understand about capacity. Every person has a certain level of capacity at any given time: capacity to handle responsibility, capacity to manage complexity, capacity to stay grounded under pressure, capacity to remain clear in uncertain situations. This capacity grows over time. It expands as you experience more, as you learn more, as you develop more stability. And certain things require a certain level of capacity. If they arrive before your capacity has grown to meet them, they can become overwhelming. They can create stress instead of growth. They can feel like too much instead of something you can manage. But when your capacity has expanded, those same things feel different. They feel manageable. They feel like something you can work with, not something that controls you. And this is what delay is often supporting. It is allowing your capacity to grow so that what you receive does not exceed your ability to hold it. This is not something that can be measured easily. It is not always visible, but it is very real. And when you look back on your life, you can often see moments where you were given something at the right time, not too early, not too late. And because of that timing, you were able to handle it in a way that you could not have before. This is the quiet intelligence of life. It does not rush. It does not force. It allows things to unfold in a way that supports growth, not just immediate satisfaction. And when you begin to trust this, something shifts inside you. The urgency begins to soften. The need to have everything now begins to ease. The pressure you place on yourself begins to lift. You start to see that what is not happening yet is not necessarily missing. It may be forming. It may be aligning. It may be waiting for you to become ready in ways that you are still discovering. This does not mean you stop moving forward. It means you move forward with awareness. You continue to grow. You continue to learn. You continue to build yourself in ways that support what you want, but you do not force the timing. You allow life to meet you where you are becoming ready. And in that space, something powerful happens. You stop chasing outcomes from a place of lack. You start aligning with them from a place of readiness. You become less focused on when something will happen. You become more focused on who you are becoming in the process. And this changes everything, because once you become the person who can sustain what you want, the delay no longer needs to exist. Not because life suddenly decides to give you what you asked for, but because you have grown into someone who can receive it without losing it. And that is a very different experience. It is not rushed. It is not fragile. It is stable. It is aligned. It is supported by everything you have become along the way. And when it finally arrives, it does not feel like something you need to hold tightly out of fear. It feels like something that fits naturally into your life, because you are ready for it. And that readiness is what the delay was quietly protecting all along. And as that understanding settles, another quiet truth begins to surface. Because it is one thing to become ready, but it is another thing to realize that not everything you were ready for was actually meant to stay in your path. Some things leave not because you were unprepared, but because they were never aligned with where your life was truly heading. And this is where something even more subtle begins to unfold. Not delay this time, but direction. A kind of movement that does not always feel like progress in the moment, yet quietly shifts everything. There is a certain kind of disappointment that lingers longer than others. It is the kind that comes from something almost happening. Not a clear rejection, not a complete absence, but something that came close enough to feel real, then slipped away. Those moments carry a different weight. They make you question yourself. They make you wonder what you missed, what you did wrong, what could have been different if only one small detail had changed. But what if nothing was wrong? What if that moment was not a mistake, but a redirection? There are paths in life that feel right because they are familiar, not because they are correct. They match your expectations. They align with what you have been taught to want. They seem to offer security, recognition, or comfort. And because of that, the mind quickly attaches to them. It builds a future around them. It starts to believe that this is the way things are supposed to unfold. So when that path disappears, it feels like something has been taken from you. But in many cases, something has been removed to make space. Silent redirection does not come with explanation. It does not arrive with a clear message saying, "This is not for you." It simply changes the course. It closes one door while another remains unseen. It moves you away from something without immediately showing you what you are moving toward. And this is where most people struggle, because the mind wants clarity before it accepts change. It wants to know where it is going before it lets go of where it was. It wants reassurance that the new path will be better before it releases the old one. But life does not always work that way. Sometimes the redirection happens first, and the understanding comes later. This creates a gap, a space where nothing seems certain, a space where the old path is gone and the new path has not yet fully appeared. And in that space, the mind begins to fill in the silence with doubt. It says, maybe you missed your chance. It says maybe that was the only opportunity. It says maybe things will not work out now. But these thoughts are not always truth. They are reactions to the unknown. The truth is often much quieter. The truth is that you were being moved, not because you were wrong, not because you failed, but because something better aligned with your path exists beyond what you could see at that moment. There are countless moments in life where what you thought was a loss later reveals itself as direction. A job that did not work out leads you to a path that fits you more deeply. A relationship that ended creates space for a connection that is more stable and honest. A plan that failed opens the door to something you would have never considered otherwise. But at the time, none of this is visible. At the time, all you see is what did not happen. This is why silent redirection feels uncomfortable. It requires you to trust without immediate evidence. It asks you to continue moving without full clarity. It challenges your attachment to specific outcomes. But within that challenge, something begins to grow. Flexibility, the ability to adapt without losing yourself. The ability to shift direction without feeling like you are losing your identity. The ability to stay open to possibilities that you did not plan. This flexibility is important because life is not a straight path. It moves in ways that are not always predictable. It introduces changes that you did not expect. It presents opportunities that do not look like what you originally imagined. And if you are too attached to one version of how things should be, you may miss what is actually available to you. Silent redirection helps loosen that attachment. It teaches you that your initial plan is not always the final plan. It shows you that there are multiple ways for your life to unfold. It expands your understanding of what is possible. There is also something important to understand about how you interpret missed opportunities. When something does not work out, the mind often frames it as loss. It focuses on what could have been. It imagines a version of the future that is now out of reach, and it compares your current reality to that imagined future. This creates a sense of lack, a feeling that something valuable has been taken away. But that imagined future is not reality. It is a projection. It is built on assumptions. It does not include the full picture. It does not account for the challenges, the difficulties, the parts that would not have worked. It only shows the parts that look appealing. So when you compare your current path to that imagined version, it feels like you lost something perfect. But what you lost was not a complete reality. It was a partial image, and silent redirection moves you away from that image towards something real, something that includes both the visible and the unseen, something that fits your life more accurately. This does not always feel better immediately. Sometimes the new path feels uncertain. It may not have the same level of clarity. It may require you to explore, to learn, to adjust. But over time, it begins to reveal its value. You start to see connections that were not obvious before. You begin to notice how certain events are leading you in a specific direction. You recognize patterns that show you are not lost, but guided. This recognition builds trust. Not blind trust, but a grounded understanding that your life is not moving randomly, that even when things do not go as planned, there is a form of direction present. There is also a deeper level to this. Silent redirection often aligns you with parts of yourself that you have not fully explored. When one path closes, you are sometimes pushed toward areas of growth that you would have avoided otherwise. You may discover interests that you did not previously consider. You may develop skills that you would not have needed on your original path. You may meet people who introduce you to new perspectives. These experiences expand you. They shape your understanding of yourself and the world. And in many cases, they lead you to something that fits you more deeply than what you initially wanted. But this expansion requires openness. It requires you to step into the unknown without holding too tightly to what you expected. It requires you to let go of the idea that your original plan was the only correct one. This is not easy, because the mind finds comfort in certainty. It prefers known paths, even if they are not fully aligned. But growth often happens outside of that comfort. It happens when you are willing to explore new directions. It happens when you allow your life to unfold in ways that are not fully predictable. Silent redirection supports this process. It gently moves you away from what is limited. It guides you toward what is more expansive. It does not force you, but it creates conditions that encourage movement. There is also something important to understand about timing within redirection. Just because a path closes does not mean the next one will appear immediately. There can be a period of transition, a space where you are no longer where you were, but not yet where you are going. This space can feel uncomfortable. It may feel like you are in between, like you are waiting for something to become clear. But this space is not empty. It is a place of integration, a place where you process what has changed, a place where you adjust to a new direction, a place where your understanding deepens. If you rush through this space, you may miss its value. But if you allow yourself to be present within it, you begin to see more clearly. You begin to notice subtle signs. You begin to feel what resonates and what does not. You begin to align with a path that feels more authentic. This alignment is not forced. It emerges naturally as you become more aware. And this awareness is what allows you to recognize the new path when it appears. Without it, you may overlook opportunities that are right in front of you because they do not match your previous expectations. Silent redirection also teaches you something about control. It shows you that not everything can be planned, that there are aspects of life that unfold beyond your direct influence. And instead of resisting this, you begin to work with it. You take action where you can. You make decisions based on clarity. But you also allow space for life to guide you in ways you cannot fully predict. This balance between action and openness creates a different experience. You are not passive. You are not waiting without movement. You are engaged, but you are also receptive. You are not forcing outcomes. You are allowing them to unfold while staying aligned with your values. And this creates a sense of flow, a feeling that you are moving with life, not against it. This does not mean there will be no challenges. There will still be moments of uncertainty. There will still be times when things do not go as planned. But your relationship with those moments changes. You do not immediately interpret them as failure. You see them as part of a larger process. You remain open to what they may be guiding you toward. And this openness allows you to move forward with less resistance, less frustration, less attachment to specific outcomes, more trust in the unfolding of your path. Over time, you begin to look back and see how different pieces of your life connect. How one missed opportunity led to another. How one closed door opened a different one. How certain experiences prepared you for what came next. And you begin to understand that what felt like random changes were actually part of a coherent direction. A direction that was not always visible, but was always present. This understanding does not come from thinking alone. It comes from experience. From living through moments of uncertainty and seeing how they unfold. From recognizing patterns that repeat in a meaningful way. From noticing how your path evolves over time. And when you see this clearly, something changes inside you. You stop fearing missed opportunities as much. You stop clinging so tightly to specific outcomes. You become more willing to explore, to adapt, to move in new directions. Because you understand that what is meant for you is not limited to one path. There are multiple ways for your life to align, multiple ways for you to grow, multiple ways for you to find fulfillment. And silent redirection is one of the ways life guides you toward those possibilities. It does not always feel comfortable. It does not always make sense immediately. But it carries a quiet intelligence, a way of moving you toward what fits you more deeply, even when you cannot yet see it. And as you begin to trust this, even slightly, something shifts. The fear of missing out begins to fade. The pressure to make everything happen exactly as planned begins to ease. The need to control every detail begins to soften, and in that space, you become more present, more aware, more connected to the flow of your own life, because you are no longer fighting every change. You are learning to move with it. And that movement, guided by both your actions and life's quiet direction, leads you forward. Not always in a straight line, but in a way that continues to shape you, support you, and align you with what is truly meant for you, even when it first appeared as something you thought you lost. And as that quiet redirection begins to make sense, something even more personal starts to surface. Because sometimes it is not the path that needs to change. It is the part of you that walks it. You were moved not only to a better direction, but to a deeper version of yourself. And now, another truth begins to unfold. Some delays are not about the world outside you. They exist because your inner world is still catching up with what is coming. There is a kind of weight that certain experiences carry. Not physical weight, but emotional weight. The kind that tests your reactions, your patience, your stability, your ability to remain calm when things are uncertain or uncomfortable. And many times, what you are asking for in life comes with this invisible weight attached to it. Success brings pressure. Love brings vulnerability. Growth brings change. Responsibility brings expectation. These are not problems. They are part of the experience. But if your emotional state is not prepared to handle these layers, what you receive can quickly become overwhelming. This is where emotional maturity becomes important. And this is where delay begins to take on a deeper meaning. Emotional maturity is not about appearing calm on the surface. It is not about suppressing feelings or pretending that nothing affects you. It is about developing the capacity to feel without losing balance, to respond without reacting impulsively, to stay present without being consumed by fear, anger, or insecurity. This kind of stability does not appear instantly. It is built over time, through experiences, through challenges, through moments where things do not go your way and you are forced to look at how you handle it. This is what many people do not realize. The delay you are experiencing may not be about the thing you want. It may be about how you would handle it if it arrived right now. If something important came into your life today, would you meet it with clarity or confusion? Would you respond with patience or pressure? Would you act from understanding or from fear? These questions are not meant to create doubt. They are meant to reveal where growth is still happening. Because emotional maturity is what allows you to hold what you receive without being shaken by it. Without this maturity, even positive experiences can become difficult. A relationship can turn into anxiety. An opportunity can turn into stress. A responsibility can turn into pressure that feels too heavy. But when emotional maturity is present, something changes. You still feel, you still care, but you are not overwhelmed by every shift. You can navigate complexity without losing yourself. You can stay grounded even when things are uncertain. And this is what delay is often preparing you for. There is a gap that exists between where you are emotionally and what you are asking for. This gap is not always obvious. You may feel ready because your desire is strong. You may believe you can handle something because you have imagined it. But real experience reveals things that imagination cannot. It reveals how you respond under pressure, how you deal with disappointment, how you handle conflict, how you manage uncertainty. These are the areas where emotional maturity shows itself, and these are the areas that delay quietly develops. There are moments in life where you are given time to face smaller challenges before larger ones arrive. You deal with minor disappointments. You encounter situations that test your patience. You experience uncertainty that stretches your ability to stay calm. These moments are not random. They are building your capacity. They are giving you a chance to develop emotional strength in manageable ways, so that when something bigger comes, you are not starting from zero. You have already practiced. You have already grown. You have already seen how you respond and adjusted accordingly. This process is often uncomfortable, because it requires you to sit with feelings that you would rather avoid. Frustration, impatience, doubt. These feelings rise when things are delayed, and instead of disappearing quickly, they stay long enough for you to notice them, to understand them, to see how they influence your thoughts and actions. This awareness is important because emotional maturity begins with awareness. You cannot change what you do not see, and delay gives you the time to see clearly, to notice patterns in your reactions, to recognize habits that may not serve you, to understand where you lose balance and where you remain steady. This understanding allows you to grow, not by force, but by observation, by choosing different responses, by becoming more intentional in how you handle your inner state. There is also something important to understand about emotional triggers. Certain situations activate strong reactions within you. They may remind you of past experiences. They may touch on areas where you feel insecure or uncertain. These triggers are not problems. They are signals. They show you where your emotional maturity is still developing. If something you want arrives while these triggers are still strong, it can create instability because your reactions may be driven by those unresolved areas. But when there is delay, there is time to work through these triggers, to understand them, to reduce their intensity, to develop a more balanced response. This creates a different experience when the desired outcome finally arrives. Instead of reacting from old patterns, you respond from a place of clarity, and this makes everything more stable. There is also a connection between emotional maturity and patience. Patience is not simply waiting, it is the ability to remain calm and steady during the waiting. It is the ability to accept that things are unfolding in their own time, without feeling the need to rush or force them. This ability does not come easily. It is developed through experience, through moments where you are required to wait, where you cannot control the outcome, where you must trust the process without immediate results. These moments build patience, and patience builds emotional strength, because it teaches you that you can remain stable even when things are uncertain, that you do not need immediate answers to feel at ease, that you can hold space for the unknown without becoming overwhelmed. This is a powerful skill, and it is one that supports everything you receive in life. There is also a deeper aspect of emotional maturity that involves letting go of control, letting go of rigid expectations, letting go of the need for everything to happen in a specific way. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you allow space for things to unfold naturally, without trying to control every detail. This flexibility is important, because life rarely follows a fixed plan. It moves in ways that are not always predictable, and if you are too rigid in your expectations, you may struggle to adapt. But when you have developed emotional maturity, you can adjust. You can move with changes. You can remain grounded even when things shift. And this makes your experience of life smoother, more balanced, more aligned. There is also something important to understand about emotional resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover from challenges, to move forward after setbacks, to remain steady even when things do not go as planned. This ability is not automatic. It is built over time, through experiences that test you, through moments where you must find your way back to balance. Delay provides these moments. It gives you opportunities to develop resilience in smaller ways, so that when larger challenges arise, you are prepared, you know how to navigate them, you know how to return to a place of stability. And this resilience supports everything you do. It allows you to handle success without becoming overwhelmed. It allows you to handle difficulties without losing direction. It allows you to continue moving forward, even when things are not perfect. There is also a connection between emotional maturity and clarity. When your emotions are stable, your thinking becomes clearer. You are able to see situations more objectively, You are less influenced by immediate reactions. You can make decisions based on understanding, not impulse. This clarity is important because it influences the choices you make, and the choices you make shape your life. Delay gives you time to develop this clarity, to observe without rushing, to think without pressure, to understand before acting, and this leads to better decisions, decisions that are aligned with your values, decisions that support your growth, decisions that create stability in the long term. There is also something important about how you relate to yourself. Emotional maturity includes self-awareness, understanding your strengths, understanding your limitations, being honest with yourself about where you are, without judgment, without pressure. This honesty allows you to grow, because you are not pretending to be somewhere you are not. You are working with your current state and building from there. Delay supports this process. It gives you time to reflect, to understand yourself more deeply, to develop a stronger connection with who you are. And this connection supports everything you receive, because you are not relying on external outcomes to define you. You have a stable sense of self that remains steady regardless of circumstances. There is also a deeper sense of peace that comes with emotional maturity, a quiet stability, a sense that you can handle what comes, not because everything will be easy, but because you trust your ability to navigate it. This trust is built over time, through experiences that show you your own strength, through moments where you face challenges and move through them, through the gradual development of your inner stability. Delay contributes to this. It creates the conditions for growth. It allows you to develop strength without being overwhelmed. It supports your ability to become ready for what is coming. And when you begin to see this, your relationship with delay changes. You no longer see it as something that is holding you back. You begin to see it as something that is building you up, preparing you, strengthening you, expanding your capacity, so that when what you desire finally arrives, you are able to meet it fully, not with fear, not with confusion, but with clarity, with stability, with the emotional strength to handle it in a way that supports your growth. And this changes everything, because now the delay is not empty, it is active. It is shaping you, it is preparing you, it is ensuring that when the moment comes, you are not only receiving what you want, you are ready to sustain it, and that readiness is what allows the experience to become something lasting, something stable, something aligned with who you have become, and that is the quiet purpose behind emotional maturity lag. Not to slow you down unnecessarily, but to make sure that when life moves forward, you can move with it, without losing yourself. And as that emotional strength begins to take shape, something even more humbling starts to reveal itself. Because it is one thing to be prepared for what is coming, but it is another thing entirely to realize how much you have already been protected from without even knowing it. Not everything that didn't happen was a delay. Some things were quietly stopped. Some paths ended before they could unfold into something far more difficult. And most of the time, you never see what almost became your reality. There is a strange kind of blindness that comes with being human. You only see what happens. You rarely see what was prevented. You remember the opportunity that failed, but you do not see the chain of events that would have followed if it had succeeded. You feel the disappointment of something not working out, but you do not feel the weight of the consequences you were spared from. This creates an incomplete view of your life, because you judge your path based on visible outcomes, not invisible protections. There are moments where you believed something falling apart was the worst thing that could happen. A plan collapsed, a connection ended, a door closed suddenly. And at the time, it felt like loss. It felt like something important had been taken away. It felt like life had turned against you. But what if that collapse was not a failure? What if it was prevention? There are outcomes that carry hidden consequences. They look promising on the surface, but they unfold into something very different once you are inside them. And if you had entered those situations without awareness, without preparation, without the maturity you now have, they could have shaped your life in ways that would have been difficult to recover from. But you did not enter them. Not because you were unlucky, but because something stopped them. This is the collapse that didn't happen. It is the argument that never turned into something worse. It is the relationship that never fully formed. It is the opportunity that disappeared before you committed to it. It is the decision you almost made, but somehow didn't. These moments do not always stand out. They do not come with clear signs. They simply pass. And because they pass quietly, they are often forgotten. But their impact remains. Because what did not happen still shaped your life. There is a deeper level of trust that begins to form when you start recognizing this. You begin to understand that your life is not only guided by what moves forward, but also by what is held back. You start to see that not every closed door is a loss. Some are protection from paths that would have led to confusion, instability, or regret. There are people who have entered situations that looked perfect at the beginning, only to realize later that those situations carried challenges they were not prepared for. They accepted an opportunity that seemed right, but it came with pressure that overwhelmed them. They committed to a relationship that felt strong at first, but later revealed patterns that created emotional strain. They followed a path that promised success, but it led them away from what truly mattered to them. These experiences are not uncommon, they are part of life, but what is often overlooked is how many times these experiences are avoided. How many times something that could have become difficult simply never happens, and because it never happens, it is not seen as protection, it is seen as absence. This is where perspective begins to shift. When you start to consider that what did not happen may have been as important as what did, your understanding of your life becomes more complete. You begin to see that there is a form of care present, even in moments that felt disappointing, that there is a kind of guidance that operates quietly, without needing to be recognized in the moment. There are also times when you come very close to something, close enough to feel it, close enough to imagine it, close enough to believe it is about to become part of your life, and then it disappears. These moments can feel confusing because they create a sense of almost happened, almost worked, almost became something real, and the mind holds on to that almost. It replays it. It wonders what could have been. It questions why it did not continue. But that almost may have been the boundary, the point where life allowed you to see just enough but not step fully into it, because stepping fully into it would have created consequences that were not aligned with your path. This is not always easy to accept, because the mind prefers certainty. It prefers clear outcomes. It prefers knowing exactly why something did or did not happen. But life does not always provide that clarity immediately. Sometimes clarity comes much later, when you have enough distance to see what was hidden at the time. There are moments where you look back and realize that if something had continued, it would have led to difficulty. Not because it was bad, but because it was not right for you at that stage of your life. You were not ready for what it required. You did not yet see what it contained. You would have made decisions from a place that was not fully aware. And those decisions would have shaped your path in ways that may have been difficult to adjust later. But because that path did not unfold, you were able to move in a different direction. A direction that may not have been clear at the time, but later revealed itself to be more aligned. This is the quiet nature of protection. It does not always announce itself. It does not always feel like relief. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like something ended before it had the chance to become something meaningful. But meaning is not always found in continuation. Sometimes meaning is found in prevention. There is also something important to understand about how the mind processes these moments. The mind tends to focus on what is visible. It creates stories around what it can see. And when something does not happen, it fills in the gaps with assumptions. It imagines the best version of what could have been. It does not include the challenges, the difficulties, the parts that would have been hard to manage. So the imagined version becomes idealized. And when compared to your current reality, it feels like you lost something valuable. But that comparison is not accurate because it is based on incomplete information. It is based on a version of reality that was never fully experienced. And when you begin to see this, the sense of loss begins to change. You start to question the assumptions you made about what could have been. You begin to consider that what you imagined may not have been the full picture. You become more open to the idea that what did not happen may have carried complexities you were not aware of. This does not mean you dismiss your feelings. It means you expand your understanding. You allow for the possibility that there is more to the situation than what you initially saw. This openness creates space for a different kind of reflection. Instead of focusing only on what was missed, you begin to consider what was avoided. Instead of asking, "Why did this not work?" you ask, "What might this have led to if it did?" These questions do not always have clear answers, but they shift your perspective. They allow you to see your experiences from a wider view. And this wider view reduces the sense of regret, because you are no longer only focused on the surface outcome. You are considering the deeper layers that were not visible at the time. There is also a connection between this understanding and gratitude. Not the kind of gratitude that forces positivity, but a quiet recognition that your life has been shaped by both what happened and what did not. That there are moments of protection that you did not see, but that still influenced your path. That there are situations you were kept from entering, not because you were lacking, but because they were not aligned. This recognition creates a different relationship with your past. You begin to see it as something that has been guided in ways you did not always understand. You become less focused on what you think you missed, and more aware of how your path has unfolded in a way that supports your growth. There is also something important about how this understanding affects your present. When you recognize that you have been protected in the past, it becomes easier to trust the present moment. Even when things are unclear, even when something does not go as planned, you begin to consider that there may be a reason beyond what you can currently see. This does not mean you stop thinking. It means you stop assuming that every unexpected outcome is negative. You allow for the possibility that something is being adjusted in a way that supports your long-term well-being. This creates a sense of calm, not because everything is certain, but because you are not immediately reacting to uncertainty with fear. You are open to understanding what may be happening beneath the surface. And this openness allows you to move forward with more balance, more awareness, more trust in the unfolding of your life. There is also a deeper sense of humility that comes with this realization. You begin to accept that your perspective is limited, that you do not always see the full picture, that there are factors influencing your path that you are not aware of. This humility is not weakness. It is clarity. It allows you to approach life with less rigidity, less need to control every outcome, more willingness to adapt and learn. And this makes your experience of life more fluid, more aligned with the natural movement of things, because you are not constantly trying to force a specific outcome. You are allowing space for what is meant to unfold. There are also moments where you can feel this protection in a more direct way. When something does not work out, and shortly after, you see something that reveals why it was not right. A detail you did not notice before. A situation that becomes clearer with time. A piece of information that changes your perspective. These moments create a sense of recognition. A realization that what felt like a loss was actually a form of guidance. And these recognitions build trust. They show you that your life is not random, that there is a form of intelligence present in how things unfold. That even when something does not go as planned, there may be a reason that becomes clear later. And when you begin to trust this, something shifts. The fear of things not working out becomes less intense. The need to control every detail begins to soften. The pressure to have everything happen in a specific way begins to ease, because you understand that what is meant for you will not require you to force it into existence. And what is not meant for you will not stay, no matter how much you try to hold on to it. This understanding creates a sense of freedom. Freedom from constantly worrying about what could go wrong. Freedom from holding on to outcomes that are not aligned. Freedom from the belief that every missed opportunity is a mistake. Because you begin to see that some of the most important moments in your life are the ones that never fully happened. The conversations that did not continue. The paths that did not unfold. The decisions that were never finalized. These moments shaped your life just as much as the ones that did, and they did so quietly, without needing recognition, without needing explanation. They simply adjusted your path, moved you in a different direction, protected you from experiences that would not have supported your growth. And when you begin to see this clearly, something changes inside you. You stop measuring your life only by what you have gained. You start to appreciate what you have been spared from. You recognize that protection does not always feel like safety in the moment. Sometimes it feels like something ended too soon. Sometimes it feels like something never began. But that does not make it any less real. Because the collapse that didn't happen still mattered. It still shaped your path. It still guided you, even if you did not see it at the time. And now, with this awareness, you can move forward with a different kind of trust. Not blind, not passive, but grounded in the understanding that your life has been quietly protected in ways you are only beginning to recognize. And as that realization begins to settle, something even more confronting starts to emerge. Because it is one thing to see that you were protected from what could have harmed you, but it is another thing entirely to accept that sometimes what you were asking for was part of that harm. Not because your desire was wrong, but because it was not aligned with what would truly support your life. And this is where a deeper kind of understanding begins. The difference between what you want and what actually fits. There is a quiet tension that lives inside desire. It pulls you forward. It gives you direction. It makes life feel meaningful. Without desire, there would be no movement, no growth, no change. But desire on its own does not guarantee truth. It does not guarantee that what you are reaching for is right for you. It only reflects what you feel you need at a certain moment. And feelings can be influenced by many things: past experiences, social expectations, fear of missing out, the need for validation, the discomfort of being where you are. All of these can shape what you desire, often without you realizing it. So when something you want does not happen immediately, the mind reacts. It assumes something is wrong. It assumes you are being denied. It assumes that life is withholding something important. But what if that delay is not denial? What if it is mercy? Mercy is not always gentle in how it appears. Sometimes it looks like resistance. Sometimes it looks like something not working out. Sometimes It feels like something slipping away just when you thought it was within reach. But beneath that experience, there may be something deeper, a correction, a quiet adjustment, a way of guiding you away from something that does not truly align with who you are becoming. Desire often focuses on immediate satisfaction. It looks at what feels good now, what seems to solve a problem, what appears to bring relief. But alignment is different. Alignment looks at the full picture. It considers not only how something feels at the beginning, but how it unfolds over time. It asks whether this fits your values, whether it supports your growth, whether it brings stability, not just excitement. This difference is subtle but important, because many things feel right in the moment, but are not right in the long term. And when you are driven only by desire, it is easy to overlook this. You move toward what feels good. You ignore the signs that something may not fit. You convince yourself that it will work out because you want it to. But life does not always respond to what you want. It responds to what aligns. And when something does not align, it may not move forward, no matter how strong your desire is. This is where delay becomes a form of mercy. It interrupts the movement towards something that is not fully aligned. It creates space for you to see more clearly. It prevents you from committing too quickly. It gives you time to understand what you are really asking for. There are many situations where people get exactly what they want, only to realize later that it was not what they needed. They enter relationships that feel exciting but lack depth. They pursue goals that bring recognition but not fulfillment. They make decisions that solve short-term problems but create long-term complications. At first, everything feels right. But over time, the misalignment becomes clear. And by then, it is more difficult to change direction. This is why not getting what you want immediately can be a form of protection. It allows you to pause, to reflect, to question whether what you are chasing is truly aligned with your life. This does not mean that desire is something to ignore. It means that desire needs to be understood. It needs to be examined. It needs to be balanced with awareness. Because not every desire comes from a place of clarity. Some come from fear, some come from insecurity, some come from a need to escape discomfort. And when these desires are fulfilled, they do not bring lasting peace. They only temporarily cover what is unresolved. There is also something important to understand about how desire changes over time. What you want today may not be what you want a year from now. As you grow, your perspective shifts, your values evolve, your understanding deepens, and things that once seemed important may no longer hold the same meaning. If everything you desired came to you immediately, you would not have the chance to outgrow certain desires. You would be locked into choices that were based on a previous version of yourself. But when there is delay, there is space for your desire to evolve, to become more aligned with who you are becoming. This evolution is important because it ensures that what you eventually receive fits your current state, not your past one. There is also a deeper layer to this. Sometimes what you want is not the actual thing. It is what you believe that thing will give you. You may think you want success, but what you really want is a sense of worth. You may think you want a relationship, but what you really want is connection. You may think you want a certain outcome, but what you really want is relief from uncertainty. When desire is based on these deeper needs, it can become misplaced. You chase something external, believing it will resolve something internal. But external outcomes cannot fully resolve internal states, and when they do not, you are left feeling confused. Because you got what you wanted, but it did not bring the peace you expected. Delay helps reveal this. It gives you time to look beneath the surface of your desires, to understand what is really driving them, to see whether what you are chasing is the true source of what you need. This understanding allows you to make more aligned choices. Choices that address the root, not just the surface. There is also something important about how alignment feels. It is not always intense. It is not always urgent. It does not create the same kind of pressure as desire. It is quieter, more stable, more grounded. It does not push you to act immediately. It allows you to move with clarity. This can feel unfamiliar because the mind is used to intensity. It is used to strong emotions guiding decisions. But alignment does not rely on intensity. It relies on understanding, on a deeper sense of what fits. And when you begin to recognize this, your relationship with desire changes. You become less reactive, less driven by immediate impulses, more aware of what truly supports your life. And this awareness allows you to navigate your desires more wisely. There is also a connection between this and trust. When you trust that not everything you want immediately is meant for you, you become less attached to specific outcomes. You are still engaged, you still have goals, but you are not dependent on any single outcome to feel at peace. This creates a sense of freedom because you are not constantly chasing. You are allowing things to unfold while staying aligned with your values. This does not mean you stop taking action. It means your actions are guided by clarity, not urgency. You move toward what feels aligned, not just what feels exciting. And this leads to more stable outcomes, outcomes that support your growth, not just your immediate desires. There is also something important about how this affects your emotional state. When you are attached to getting what you want immediately, you create pressure. Pressure to achieve, pressure to succeed, pressure to make things happen quickly. And this pressure creates stress. It makes it difficult to enjoy the present because you are always focused on what is next. But when you release this attachment, something changes. You become more present, more relaxed, more able to appreciate where you are, even while working toward where you want to be. This balance is important because it allows you to move forward without losing your sense of peace. It allows you to grow without feeling constant tension, and this makes the journey more sustainable. There is also a deeper sense of wisdom that comes with this understanding. You begin to see that life is not only about getting what you want, it is about becoming someone who understands what is worth wanting. This shift changes everything, because it moves you from chasing outcomes to aligning with them. It moves you from reacting to desire to understanding it. It moves you from seeking immediate results to building something that lasts. And this is where the true value of delay becomes clear. It is not just slowing you down, it is refining your direction. It is helping you distinguish between what you want and what truly fits your life. It is guiding you toward choices that support your long-term well-being, even if they do not provide immediate satisfaction. This is not always easy to accept, because it requires patience, it requires trust, it requires letting go of the idea that everything you want should happen right away. But when you begin to see the deeper purpose behind delay, it becomes easier. You start to recognize that not getting what you want immediately is not a failure. It is an opportunity to align more deeply, to understand yourself better, to make choices that are more connected to who you are becoming. And this changes your experience of life, because you are no longer chasing everything that appears desirable. You are moving toward what is truly aligned, and that movement is more stable, more grounded, more fulfilling, because it is not based on temporary desire. It is based on a deeper understanding of what supports your life. And when you live from this place, something shifts. You feel less urgency, less pressure, less need to control outcomes, because you trust that what is aligned will come in its own time, without force, without struggle, without the need to chase it. And in that trust, there is peace, a quiet confidence that you are moving in the right direction, even when things are not happening immediately, because you understand that not every delay is a denial. Some delays are mercy, a way of protecting you from what does not align and guiding you toward what truly does. And as that quiet understanding deepens, another illusion begins to loosen its grip, because it is one thing to release attachment to immediate desire, but it is another thing entirely to release the fear that time is running out. This fear sits quietly in the background of many decisions. It whispers that you are late, that others are ahead, that chances are disappearing, and from that whisper, urgency is born again in a different form. Not just the need to have something, but the fear that if it does not happen soon, it never will. There is a heavy feeling that comes with believing you are behind in life. It is not always loud, but it is constant. It appears when you see others moving forward. It shows up when you think about where you thought you would be by now. It sits in the space between your expectations and your current reality. This feeling creates pressure. It makes you think that every moment must be used to catch up, that every delay is a step further away from where you should be, that every missed opportunity is time you cannot recover. But this belief is built on an illusion. The illusion that your life is operating on a fixed deadline. The illusion that there is a specific timeline you must follow. The illusion that if something does not happen by a certain point, it has been lost. This illusion is powerful because it feels logical. You see examples around you, people reaching milestones at certain ages, achieving goals within certain time frames, moving through life in ways that appear structured and predictable. And the mind uses these examples to create a standard, a silent rule about when things should happen. But life does not follow a single timeline. It unfolds differently for each person. What comes early for one may come later for another. What takes time for one may happen quickly for someone else. And none of these variations mean that something is wrong. They simply reflect different paths. When you believe in the illusion of lost time, you begin to measure your life against a standard that was never designed for you. You compare your journey to others without knowing the full story behind their path. You assume that what is happening for them should also be happening for you. And when it is not, you feel like you are falling behind. This comparison creates unnecessary pressure because it ignores the uniqueness of your experience. It ignores the factors that shape your path. It ignores the growth that is happening in ways that are not immediately visible. There is also something important to understand about how the mind interprets time. The mind tends to focus on visible progress. It looks for clear signs that something is moving forward. It wants results that can be measured, but not all progress is visible. Some of the most important changes happen internally. Your understanding deepens, your perspective shifts, your emotional stability strengthens, your awareness becomes clearer. These changes may not be obvious from the outside, but they are essential. They shape how you experience everything that comes into your life. And they take time that the mind often overlooks, because it is focused on external outcomes. So when you think you have lost time, what you are often overlooking is what has been built during that time. The lessons you have learned, the growth you have experienced, the changes that have prepared you for what is ahead. This is not wasted time, it is foundational time, time that supports everything that will come next. There is also a deeper misunderstanding about how things meant for you operate. The idea that something meant for you can be missed because of timing is often based on fear. Fear that you did not act fast enough. Fear that you were not ready at the right moment. Fear that an opportunity has passed and will never return. But what is truly aligned with your life does not disappear because of a moment. It may change form. It may appear differently. It may take a different path. But it does not vanish simply because you did not reach it at a specific time. This is important because it removes the pressure to rush. It allows you to move at a pace that supports your growth. without feeling like you are losing something with every delay. There are many moments in life where something does not happen when you expect, but later returns in a different way. An opportunity that seemed lost reappears in a new form. A connection that did not work out at one point becomes possible later. A path that seemed closed opens again under different circumstances. These moments show that timing is not always fixed, that life has a way of bringing things back when conditions are right. Not just externally, but internally, when you are ready, when the situation aligns, when the timing supports a more stable outcome. This is why rushing can be counterproductive, because it moves you towards something before the conditions are fully aligned. It pushes you into experiences that may not be sustainable. It creates outcomes that may not last. But when you allow time to unfold naturally, something different happens. Things align more deeply. Opportunities fit more naturally. Experiences become more stable because they are not forced. They are integrated into your life in a way that supports long-term growth. There is also something important about how you relate to the present moment. When you believe you have lost time, the present can feel like a place of lack, a place where you are not where you should be, a place that you need to escape as quickly as possible. But this creates disconnection because you are always focused on what is missing. You are not fully engaged with what is here, and when you are not present, you miss opportunities that exist right now. Opportunities to learn, to grow, to connect, to experience life as it is. These opportunities are often subtle. They do not always look like major changes, but they contribute to your overall path. They shape your understanding. They prepare you for what is coming. And when you are present, you are more able to recognize them, more able to engage with them, more able to use them to support your growth. There is also a connection between the illusion of lost time and the need for control. When you believe time is limited, you try to control outcomes more tightly. You push harder. You make decisions quickly. You act from a place of urgency. But control does not always create better results. It can lead to choices that are not fully considered. It can create stress that affects your ability to think clearly. It can move you toward outcomes that are not aligned with your deeper values. But when you release the belief that time is running out, something changes. You become more thoughtful, more intentional, more aware of what you are doing and why. This leads to better decisions, decisions that support your long-term well-being, decisions that align with who you are becoming. There is also something important about how this understanding affects your sense of self. When you believe you are behind, you may start to question your worth. You may feel like you have not done enough, like you are not where you should be. But these thoughts are based on comparison, not reality. Your worth is not determined by how quickly you reach certain milestones. It is not defined by external timelines. It is inherent. And when you understand this, you begin to relate to yourself differently, with more compassion, with more patience, with more acceptance of where you are in your journey. This creates a healthier relationship with your own growth, because you are not constantly judging yourself against an external standard. You are allowing yourself to develop in a way that is authentic to you. There is also a deeper sense of trust that emerges from this understanding. Trust that your life is not limited by a clock. Trust that what is meant for you will not be lost because of timing. Trust that your path is unfolding in a way that supports your growth. This trust does not mean you stop taking action. It means your actions are not driven by fear. They are guided by clarity, by alignment, by a deeper understanding of what supports your life. This creates a different experience. You move forward with intention, not urgency. You make decisions based on understanding, not pressure. You engage with life in a way that is more balanced, more grounded, more sustainable. There is also something important about how this affects your experience of waiting. When you believe time is being lost, waiting feels painful. It feels like something is slipping away. But when you understand that time is not being lost, waiting becomes different. It becomes a space for growth, for reflection, for preparation. It becomes part of the process, not something separate from it. This changes your relationship with waiting. You no longer resist it as strongly. You become more open to what it offers, more willing to use it to support your development. And this makes the waiting less stressful, more meaningful. There is also a deeper sense of peace that comes from releasing the illusion of lost time. Because you are no longer constantly looking ahead with anxiety, you are more present, more engaged with what is happening now, more able to appreciate your current experience, even while working toward future goals. This balance is important because it allows you to enjoy the journey, not just the outcome. It allows you to find value in each stage of your life, not just the ones that match your expectations. And this creates a more fulfilling experience because you are not waiting for life to begin. You are living it as it unfolds. There is also something important about how this understanding affects your long-term perspective. When you release the belief that time is running out, you begin to see your life as a continuous process, not a series of deadlines, but a journey that evolves over time. This perspective allows you to make decisions that support your overall path, not just immediate results. It encourages you to think about sustainability, about growth, about alignment, and this leads to outcomes that are more stable, more meaningful, more connected to who you are. There is also a connection between this understanding and your ability to adapt. When you are not attached to a specific timeline, you are more flexible, more open to changes, more able to adjust your path when needed. This flexibility is important because life rarely follows a fixed plan. It requires you to adapt, to respond to new information, to move in different directions when necessary. And when you are not constrained by rigid timelines, you are better able to do this. You are less resistant to change, more open to new possibilities, more able to move with the flow of your life. And this creates a smoother experience. Less tension, less frustration, more alignment with what is unfolding. There is also something important about how this understanding affects your sense of opportunity. When you believe time is limited, opportunities feel scarce. You feel like you must take what is available immediately, because it may not come again. But when you understand that what is meant for you is not bound by a strict timeline, opportunities feel different. They feel more abundant, more aligned, more connected to your path. You are able to choose more carefully, to wait for what fits, to engage with opportunities that support your growth. And this leads to better outcomes, because you are not acting from fear. You are acting from understanding. And when you live this way, something shifts. The pressure begins to fade. The sense of urgency begins to soften. The fear of missing out begins to lose its grip, because you understand that your life is not a race against time. It is a process of alignment, a journey that unfolds in its own way, at its own pace. And when you trust this, even slightly, you begin to experience life differently, with more ease, more clarity, more confidence in your path, because you know that nothing meant for you operates on a deadline, and nothing truly aligned with your life will be lost because it did not happen at a specific moment. It will arrive when it fits, when you are ready, when the conditions support it, and when it does, it will not feel rushed. It will feel right. And that is something that no timeline can replace. And as that trust begins to take root, something even more subtle starts to reveal itself. Because it is one thing to believe that what is meant for you will not be lost, but it is another thing to recognize that sometimes life does not just delay things, it actively interrupts them. Not gently, not quietly, but in ways that feel confusing, inconvenient, and at times deeply frustrating. Plans fall apart, things stop working, Paths you were certain about suddenly close. And in those moments, it does not feel like protection. It feels like disruption. There is a moment that many people experience but rarely understand. A moment where everything seems to be moving forward, and then suddenly, something interferes, something shifts the direction, something blocks the path, and the immediate reaction is resistance, because the mind believes it knows where things should go. It believes it has found the right path. It believes that what it is pursuing will bring peace, stability, or fulfillment. So when something interrupts that path, it feels like something is being taken away. It feels like something is going wrong. But not every interruption is a mistake. Some interruptions are intentional, not from a place you can always see, but from a deeper order that recognizes what your mind cannot yet understand. This is what can be called spiritual interference, not in a dramatic or mystical sense, but in a grounded, practical way. It is the experience of life stepping in when you're moving towards something that may disturb your peace, even if, in the moment, it feels like the right thing. There is a quiet intelligence in how life unfolds, an intelligence that is not always aligned with your immediate desires, because your desires are shaped by what you can see, what you can feel, what you believe will make things better. But this intelligence operates beyond that. It considers consequences you cannot yet predict, paths you have not yet walked, outcomes that are not immediately visible, and sometimes it interrupts your plans to protect you from those outcomes. This kind of interruption can take many forms: a sudden delay that prevents you from moving forward, a change in circumstances that forces you to reconsider, a loss of interest in something you once felt strongly about, a situation that no longer fits, even though it once did. These experiences can feel confusing, because they do not always come with clear explanations. They do not always make sense in the moment, and the mind, seeking clarity, often tries to fix or overcome them. It tries to push through the interruption, to restore the original plan, to regain the sense of control that was lost. But sometimes the interruption is the message, not something to fix, but something to understand. There is a difference between obstacles that require effort and interruptions that require awareness. Obstacles challenge you to grow stronger. They test your ability to persist. They require action, but interruptions often ask for something different. They ask for reflection, for pause, for a willingness to step back and reconsider the direction you were moving in. And this is not always easy, because stepping back can feel like losing progress, like giving up on something important, like admitting that something was not as right as you thought. But it is in this space that clarity begins to form, because when you are constantly moving forward, it is difficult to see the full picture. You are focused on the next step, the next goal, the next outcome. But when something interrupts that movement, it creates space to observe, to reflect, to understand what may not have been visible before. There is also something important about how peace is experienced. Peace is not only the absence of conflict, it is a state of alignment, a sense that what you are doing fits your life in a deeper way, that it supports your well-being, that it does not create unnecessary tension or instability. But sometimes what you are pursuing may not support that kind of peace, even if it appears beneficial on the surface. It may create stress that you have not yet fully felt. It may introduce challenges that disrupt your stability. It may lead you into situations that are not aligned with your values. And because these effects are not immediate, they are easy to overlook. You focus on the potential benefits, on what you hope to gain, on what seems attractive, but life may see beyond that, and in doing so, it may interrupt your path before those deeper consequences unfold. This is not punishment. It is preservation, a way of maintaining your inner balance, even if it requires temporary discomfort. There is also a deeper layer to this. Sometimes you are not only being protected from external outcomes, but from internal disruption, from becoming someone who is not aligned with your deeper self, because the paths you choose do not only shape your circumstances, they shape who you become. They influence your habits, your thoughts, your emotional patterns, your sense of identity. And not every path supports the person you are becoming. Some paths may lead you away from your values, away from your sense of peace, away from the stability you need. And when that is the case, interruption becomes necessary. Not to stop your progress, but to redirect it, to bring you back into alignment. There is also something important about how this affects your relationship with control. When you experience repeated interruptions, it can challenge your sense of certainty. It can make you question your plans, your decisions, your understanding of your path. And this can feel uncomfortable, because the mind prefers certainty. It prefers clear direction. It prefers to know what is coming next. But life does not always operate within that framework. It requires flexibility, adaptation, a willingness to move with changes that are not always predictable. And when you begin to accept this, your relationship with control begins to shift. You become less rigid, less attached to specific outcomes, more open to what is unfolding. This does not mean you stop planning. It means you hold your plans more lightly. You allow room for adjustment, for change, for new information to guide your direction. And this creates a different kind of stability, not based on control, but on adaptability. There is also a connection between interruption and awareness. When everything is going according to plan, it is easy to move on autopilot, to follow a path without questioning it deeply, to assume that because something is working, it is right. But interruption breaks that pattern. It brings your attention back. It forces you to become more aware of what you are doing, why you are doing it, whether it truly aligns with your deeper intentions. This awareness is valuable because it allows you to make more conscious decisions, to move forward with greater clarity, to choose paths that are more aligned with your well-being. There is also something important about how you interpret these interruptions. If you see them only as obstacles, you may respond with frustration, with resistance, with a desire to push through at all costs. But if you begin to see them as signals, something changes. You become more curious, more open to understanding what they are showing you, more willing to pause and reflect. This shift in perspective can transform your experience because you are no longer fighting against what is happening. You are engaging with it, learning from it, using it to guide your decisions. There is also a deeper sense of trust that develops from this. Trust that life is not working against you, even when things do not go as planned. Trust that interruptions are not random, that they may carry meaning, even if that meaning is not immediately clear. This trust does not eliminate discomfort. It does not make every interruption easy, but it changes how you relate to it. It allows you to remain more grounded, more centered, even when things are uncertain. There is also something important about timing within interruption. Sometimes things are interrupted not because they are wrong, but because they are not right for that moment. The path may still be relevant. The goal may still be meaningful, but the timing may not support it fully. And interruption creates the space needed for that timing to adjust, for conditions to change, for you to grow in ways that support a better outcome. This is why not every interruption leads to a permanent change. Some lead to temporary redirection, a pause, a shift in pace, a chance to approach the same path with greater awareness later. And this requires patience, because the mind often wants immediate resolution. It wants to know whether something is over or simply delayed. But life does not always provide that clarity right away. It asks you to remain present, to continue growing, to trust that what needs to unfold will do so in time. There is also a connection between interruption and peace that becomes clearer over time. When you look back on moments where your plans were disrupted, you may begin to see patterns, situations that did not work out, but later revealed themselves as misaligned. Paths that were blocked, but later showed you a better direction. Decisions that were interrupted, but prevented outcomes that would have been difficult to manage. These reflections can change how you see interruption. They can show you that what felt like loss was actually protection, that what felt like disruption was actually guidance. And this understanding deepens your trust, because you begin to see that there is a coherence to your experiences, a sense that things are not happening randomly, but in a way that supports your overall path. There is also something important about how this affects your emotional resilience. When you understand that interruptions can serve a purpose, you become less reactive, less overwhelmed by changes, more able to remain steady when things shift. This resilience is valuable because it allows you to navigate uncertainty with greater ease, to adapt without losing your sense of direction, to continue moving forward even when the path changes. There is also a deeper sense of peace that emerges from this, because you are no longer relying solely on your plans to feel secure. You are not dependent on everything going exactly as expected. You are able to find stability within yourself, even when external circumstances change, and this is a powerful shift, because it allows you to experience peace in a more consistent way, not just when things are going well, but even when they are not. There is also something important about how this understanding shapes your future decisions. When you recognize the value of interruption, you become more attentive to subtle signals, to changes in how something feels, to moments where something no longer aligns. You are less likely to ignore these signals, less likely to push through without reflection. And this leads to more aligned choices, choices that are based on awareness, not just momentum. There is also a connection between interruption and growth that becomes clearer over time, because each interruption carries the potential for learning, for deeper understanding, for a more refined sense of direction. And when you engage with these moments fully, you begin to grow in ways that are not always visible immediately, but that shape your path in meaningful ways. There is also something important about how this understanding affects your relationship with uncertainty. When you see interruption as part of the process, uncertainty becomes less threatening. It becomes something you can navigate, something that can hold meaning, something that can guide you rather than something to avoid. And this changes your experience of life, because you are no longer constantly seeking certainty. You are open to the unfolding, to the changes, to the adjustments that are part of your journey. And in that openness, there is a different kind of peace, a peace that is not dependent on everything going according to plan, but on your ability to remain aligned even when it does not. And when you reach this point, something becomes clear. Not every interruption is a setback. Not every disruption is a loss. Some are acts of protection, quiet moments where life steps in to preserve your peace, even when you do not yet understand why. And when you begin to trust this, even slightly, your experience begins to change. You move through life with less resistance, less fear of things not going as planned, more openness to what is unfolding, because you know that sometimes what feels like interference is actually care, a quiet form of guidance, leading you away from what would disturb your peace and toward what will sustain it. And as that awareness settles, something even deeper begins to unfold, because it is one thing to see that life can interrupt your path to protect your peace, but it is another thing entirely to recognize that sometimes what needs to be protected is not your path, but your attachment to it. Not the outcome itself, but the emotional grip you have placed on it. The quiet dependence that forms when you begin to believe that something outside of you must happen in order for you to feel complete. There is a subtle tension that builds when you become emotionally attached to an outcome. It does not always feel intense at first. In the beginning, it feels like hope, like excitement, like motivation. You look forward to something, you plan around it. You imagine how it will feel when it finally happens. And slowly, without noticing, your emotional state begins to tie itself to that possibility. You start to believe that when it happens, things will finally feel right. That when it comes, you will feel at peace. That when it arrives, something inside you will settle. But this is where the attachment begins, because your sense of stability becomes dependent on something that has not yet occurred. And when that thing is delayed, the emotional effect becomes clear. Restlessness begins to grow, impatience starts to build. The mind revisits the outcome again and again, trying to predict when it will happen, trying to find ways to make it happen faster, trying to regain a sense of control. This is not just desire anymore, this is dependence, and dependence creates pressure, because your peace is no longer self-contained. It is tied to timing, to circumstances, to things that are not fully within your control. And this is where delay begins to serve a deeper purpose, not just to redirect your path, but to loosen that dependence, to gently separate your emotional state from the outcome you are holding on to. At first, this can feel uncomfortable, because the attachment is still strong. You still want the outcome. You still believe it will bring something important. So when it does not happen, the mind resists. It questions. It searches for reasons. It tries to hold on to the expectation. But over time, something begins to shift. Not because you stop wanting it completely, but because the intensity begins to fade. The emotional charge weakens. The constant thinking reduces. The sense of urgency softens. And slowly, you begin to experience something different. A space between you and the outcome, a distance that allows you to see it more clearly, without the same level of emotional pull. This is detachment, not indifference, not giving up, but a balanced state where your peace is no longer dependent on a specific result. And this is where true stability begins, because when you are detached, your emotional state becomes more consistent. You are not constantly moving between hope and disappointment, between anticipation and frustration. You remain steady, engaged but not consumed, interested but not dependent. And this changes how you experience life, because you are no longer waiting for something to happen in order to feel okay. You are able to feel okay while things are still unfolding. There is also something important about how detachment affects your perception. When you are attached to an outcome, your view becomes narrow. You focus on that one possibility, that one path, that one result. And this can cause you to overlook other opportunities, other directions, other possibilities that may be more aligned. But when detachment begins to develop, your perception expands. You become more open, more aware of what is around you, more able to see alternatives. This does not mean you lose direction. It means your direction becomes more flexible, more responsive to what is actually unfolding. And this allows you to move more wisely, because you are not forcing a single outcome. You are working with what is available, adapting as needed. There is also a deeper emotional benefit to this. When you are detached, you experience less fear. Less fear of things not working out, less fear of losing something you do not yet have, less fear of uncertainty, because your sense of stability is not tied to a specific result. It is rooted within you, and this creates a sense of freedom, because you are no longer controlled by outcomes. You are not constantly reacting to whether things are going as planned. You are able to remain centered, regardless of external changes. This does not mean you stop caring. It means your care is not dependent. It is not fragile. It is steady. And this steadiness allows you to engage with life in a healthier way. There is also something important about how detachment influences your decisions. When you are attached, your decisions can be driven by fear. Fear of missing out, fear of losing an opportunity, fear of not getting what you want. And this fear can lead to choices that are not fully aligned, choices made too quickly, without enough clarity. But when you are detached, your decisions come from a different place, from understanding, from awareness, from a deeper sense of what fits your life. And this leads to better outcomes, because you are not acting out of pressure, you are acting out of clarity. There is also a connection between detachment and patience. When you are emotionally dependent on an outcome, waiting becomes difficult. Every moment feels like a delay. Every day feels like something is missing. But when detachment develops, waiting becomes easier. Not because you no longer care, but because you are not suffering in the absence of the outcome. You are able to remain present, to engage with your current experience, to continue growing without feeling incomplete. And this changes the quality of your time, because you are not simply waiting for something to happen. You are living, fully engaged with what is here. There is also something deeper about how detachment relates to identity. When you are attached to an outcome, you may begin to associate it with who you are. You may believe that achieving it will define you, that it will confirm your worth, that it will validate your efforts. But this creates a fragile sense of identity, because it depends on something external, something that may or may not happen, and when it does not happen, it can lead to doubt, to questioning your value, your direction, your choices. But when detachment develops, your identity becomes more stable, because it is not tied to outcomes. It is based on your values, your understanding, your way of being, and this creates a stronger foundation, one that is not easily shaken by external changes. There is also a connection between detachment and trust. When you are less attached, you are more able to trust the process, to allow things to unfold without constant interference, without trying to control every detail. And this trust creates a different experience, because you are not constantly managing. You are allowing, responding when needed, but not forcing. And this often leads to more natural outcomes that fit more easily into your life. There is also something important about how detachment affects your emotional energy. When you are attached, a significant amount of your energy is focused on the outcome, thinking about it, worrying about it, trying to influence it. And this can be draining. It can reduce your ability to focus on other areas of your life. But when detachment develops, that energy is freed. You are no longer constantly occupied with a single possibility. You are able to invest your energy in multiple areas, to grow in different ways, to explore new opportunities. And this creates a more balanced experience, because your life is not centered around one outcome. It is diversified, rich with different forms of growth and experience. There is also a deeper sense of peace that comes from this, because you are no longer waiting for a specific result to feel complete. You are able to experience contentment in the present, even while moving toward future goals. And this balance is important, because it allows you to pursue growth without losing your sense of peace, to strive without becoming restless, to move forward without feeling incomplete. There is also something important about how this understanding changes your relationship with delay. When you are attached, delay feels like suffering, like something is being withheld. But when detachment develops, delay feels different. It becomes neutral, sometimes even beneficial, because you see it as a space for growth, for refinement, for deeper understanding. And this changes how you respond to it. You are less reactive, less frustrated, more accepting, more able to use that time in meaningful ways. There is also a connection between detachment and resilience. When your emotional state is not tied to outcomes, you are less affected by changes, by setbacks, by delays. You are able to recover more quickly, to adapt more easily, to continue moving forward without losing your sense of direction. And this resilience is valuable, because it allows you to navigate life with greater ease, less emotional turbulence, more stability. There is also something important about how detachment influences your sense of fulfillment. When you are attached, fulfillment is always in the future. It depends on something that has not yet happened. But when detachment develops, fulfillment becomes more present. It is found in your current experience, in your growth, in your awareness, in the way you engage with life, and this creates a more consistent sense of satisfaction because it is not dependent on external events. There is also a deeper layer to this. Detachment does not mean you stop having goals. It means your goals do not control your emotional state. You can still pursue what you want, still work toward it, still care about it. But you are not defined by whether it happens or not, and this creates a healthier relationship with ambition, one that is balanced, sustainable, aligned with your well-being. There is also something important about how this affects your relationships. When you are attached to outcomes, you may place expectations on others. Expect them to behave in certain ways, to fulfill certain roles, to contribute to your desired results. But this can create tension, because others are not always able to meet those expectations. But when detachment develops, your relationships become more open, more accepting, less dependent on specific outcomes, and this allows for deeper connection, because it is not based on expectation, but on presence. There is also a connection between detachment and clarity. When you are not emotionally overwhelmed by an outcome, you are able to see things more clearly, to assess situations more accurately, to make decisions that are more aligned. And this clarity supports better outcomes, because it reduces the influence of emotional bias. It allows you to respond rather than react. And when you reach this point, something becomes clear. Delay was never just about time, it was about loosening the hold that outcomes had on your emotional state. It was about creating space between you and your expectations, so that you could experience life with more balance, more clarity, more peace. And when that space is created, even slightly, everything begins to feel different. You are no longer chasing in the same way, no longer holding on with the same intensity. You are moving forward, but with ease, with awareness, with a sense of inner stability that is not dependent on what happens next. And in that state, something powerful emerges, a quiet confidence, a steady presence, a peace that is not easily disturbed, because it is not built on outcomes. It is built on understanding, on alignment, on the ability to remain centered regardless of what is delayed, what is changing, or what is still unfolding. And when you live from that place, delay no longer feels like something being taken away. It feels like something being given, the space to detach, the space to grow, the space to become someone who is no longer controlled by outcomes, but guided by a deeper sense of peace. And as that sense of inner space becomes more familiar, something even quieter begins to reveal itself. Because once you are no longer chasing outcomes with the same intensity, once the emotional grip begins to loosen, you start to notice something that was always there, but never fully seen. A kind of movement that does not look like movement. A kind of progress that does not announce itself. The realization that even when nothing seems to be happening on the outside, something is still unfolding within. There is a phase in life that feels like stillness. A phase where things appear unchanged, where effort does not seem to produce visible results, where days pass without clear signs of forward motion. And in this phase, the mind becomes restless again. It starts to question. It wonders if anything is working. It looks for evidence of progress and struggles to find it, because the mind is trained to recognize movement through visible change, through results, through clear outcomes. But not all preparation is visible. Some of the most important work happens beneath the surface, quietly, gradually, without recognition. This is invisible preparation, a process that unfolds internally while the external world appears unchanged. It is the shift in how you think, the way your reactions begin to soften, the way your awareness becomes sharper, the way your understanding deepens, even without a clear event triggering it. These changes are subtle. They do not always stand out, but they are significant because they shape how you will experience everything that comes next. There is a reason why not everything happens immediately, because without this internal preparation, the external outcome would not be sustained. You may receive something you wanted, but not be able to hold it. You may step into a new phase, but not have the awareness to navigate it. You may achieve a goal, but still carry patterns that create instability. So life creates space, not empty space, but active space. Space where internal adjustments can take place, where old patterns can loosen, where new ways of thinking can form. This process is not always comfortable because it lacks clear direction. It does not always tell you what is changing. It does not always show immediate results. And the mind, seeking certainty, can feel lost in this space. But this does not mean nothing is happening. It means the work is happening at a level that is not immediately visible. There is also something important about how this preparation unfolds. It is not forced. It is not something you can rush. It happens through experience, through reflection, through moments of awareness that shift your perspective. Sometimes it happens through challenges, through situations that push you to respond differently, to think differently, to see things from a new angle. Other times it happens through quiet observation, through noticing patterns, through becoming aware of how you react, how you think, how you relate to different situations. And slowly, these observations begin to shape you. They begin to change how you approach life, without you always realizing it in the moment. There is also a deeper layer to this. Invisible preparation often involves letting go of old beliefs, old expectations, old ways of seeing yourself and the world. And this process can feel like loss, because you are releasing something familiar, something that once defined your perspective. But in that release, space is created. Space for new understanding, for a more aligned way of thinking. And this is necessary, because growth is not only about adding new things, it is also about removing what no longer fits. There is also something important about how this phase affects your sense of progress. When you are used to measuring progress externally, this phase can feel stagnant, like nothing is moving. But when you begin to recognize internal changes, your understanding of progress shifts. You start to see value in subtle changes, in moments of clarity, in shifts in how you respond, in the way you handle situations differently than before. And this changes your experience, because you are no longer waiting for external results to feel like you are moving forward. You are able to recognize growth in real time, even when it is not visible to others. There is also a connection between invisible preparation and patience. This phase requires you to trust that something is happening even when you cannot see it, to remain engaged without constant validation, to continue moving forward without immediate confirmation. And this builds a different kind of patience, not passive waiting, but active presence, a willingness to stay with the process, to allow it to unfold in its own time. This patience strengthens your ability to handle uncertainty, because you are no longer dependent on constant feedback. You are able to remain steady, even when things are not clearly defined. There is also something important about how this preparation shapes your readiness. Readiness is not only about having the opportunity, it is about having the capacity to handle it, to sustain it, to integrate it into your life in a stable way. And this capacity is built during these quiet phases, when you are not focused on outcomes, but on understanding, on awareness, on internal alignment. This is where your foundation is formed, the way you think, the way you respond, the way you relate to yourself and others. And this foundation determines how you will experience future outcomes, because the same situation can be experienced very differently depending on your internal state. There is also a deeper connection between invisible preparation and clarity. When you are constantly moving, constantly chasing results, it is difficult to see clearly. You are focused on doing, on achieving, on progressing. But when things slow down, when external movement is reduced, something else becomes possible. You have space to reflect, to observe, to understand. And this leads to clarity. Not forced clarity, but natural clarity. The kind that emerges when you are not overwhelmed by constant activity. And this clarity allows you to make better decisions, to choose paths that are more aligned, to recognize what fits and what does not. There is also something important about how this phase affects your emotional state. When you begin to understand that internal work is happening, even when external results are not visible, your frustration begins to soften. You become less resistant to the stillness, more accepting of the process. And this creates a different emotional experience. Less tension, less impatience, more openness, more trust. There is also a connection between invisible preparation and resilience, because during this phase you are building strength in ways that are not immediately obvious. You are learning to navigate uncertainty, to remain steady without constant validation, to trust the process even when it is not clear. And this builds resilience, a deeper ability to handle change, to adapt, to continue moving forward even when the path is not fully visible. There is also something important about how this understanding changes your relationship with time. When you recognize that preparation is happening beneath the surface, time no longer feels wasted. It feels purposeful, even when it is quiet, even when it is slow. You begin to see that every moment contributes to your development, that nothing is truly empty. And this changes how you experience your days. Because you are no longer waiting for something to happen. You are aware that something is already happening, internally, continuously. There is also a deeper sense of trust that develops from this. Trust that your life is not stagnant, even when it appears that way. Trust that growth is occurring, even when it is not visible. Trust that this phase has value, even if it does not provide immediate results. And this trust allows you to remain engaged, to continue showing up, to continue learning and growing, without needing constant confirmation. There is also something important about how this phase prepares you for future movement. Because when things do begin to shift externally, when opportunities arise, when paths open, you will not be the same person you were before. You will have more awareness, more clarity, more stability. And this will change how you engage with those opportunities. You will be more prepared, more aligned, more able to navigate what comes next. And this is the purpose of invisible preparation, not to delay your life, but to prepare you for it, to ensure that when things do move, they move in a way that is sustainable, that supports your growth, that aligns with who you are becoming. There is also a connection between this and your sense of identity, because during these quiet phases, you are not defined by external achievements. You are not measuring yourself by outcomes. You are developing a sense of self that is not dependent on visible success, and this creates a more stable identity, one that is rooted in understanding, not in results. And this stability supports everything that comes next. There is also something important about how this understanding affects your perspective. You begin to see that not all growth is meant to be seen immediately, that some of the most important changes happen quietly, without recognition, without external validation, and this changes how you relate to your journey, because you are no longer focused only on what is visible. You are aware of what is happening beneath the surface. There is also a deeper sense of peace that comes from this, because you are not constantly questioning whether you are moving forward. You trust that you are, even if you cannot see it clearly. And this trust allows you to remain calm, centered, grounded in the present moment. There is also something important about how this phase influences your future satisfaction. Because when you have gone through this internal preparation, when you have developed awareness and clarity, the outcomes you experience later feel different. They feel more aligned, more stable, more connected to who you are, because they are not just external achievements. They are expressions of your internal development. And this creates a deeper sense of fulfillment, one that is not temporary, one that is sustained. There is also a connection between invisible preparation and alignment, because this phase allows you to refine your direction, to understand what truly fits your life, to adjust your path in ways that support your well-being. And this leads to more aligned outcomes that feel right, not just successful. And when you reach this point, something becomes clear. Nothing was ever truly still. Nothing was ever truly paused. There was movement, just not the kind you were used to seeing. There was progress, just not in the way you expected. And when you begin to understand this, your relationship with stillness changes. You no longer fear it. You no longer resist it. You begin to see it as part of the process. A necessary phase of preparation, a quiet period where everything is being aligned, so that when the external world begins to move again, it does so on a foundation that is strong, stable, and ready. And in that understanding, something shifts. The restlessness fades. The need for constant visible progress softens, and in its place, there is trust. A quiet confidence that even when nothing seems to be happening, everything is still unfolding exactly as it needs to. And as that quiet preparation becomes easier to accept, another layer of understanding begins to surface. Because it is one thing to trust that something is happening beneath the surface, but it is another thing entirely to face the moments when something clearly could happen, yet it does not. The opportunity is there. The door is visible. The path is close enough to touch. And still, it does not open. That experience creates a different kind of tension, not the confusion of stillness, but the frustration of proximity, the feeling that you are right there, but not quite allowed in. There is a quiet discomfort in standing before something you deeply want and realizing it is not yet accessible. It does not feel like delay anymore. It feels intentional, as if something is holding it back, as if something is deciding that now is not the moment. And that feeling can be difficult to accept, because the mind immediately asks why. It searches for reasons. It tries to understand what is missing, what needs to change, what needs to be done differently. But not all doors remain closed because of external conditions. Some remain closed because of internal readiness. There is a kind of protection that does not come from removing opportunities, but from regulating access to them, not to deny you, but to prepare you, to ensure that when you step through, you can remain there without collapsing under the weight of what it requires. This is the gatekeeping of growth, not as a barrier, but as a filter, a way of ensuring that what enters your life matches the stability you have built within yourself. Because growth is not only about reaching new levels, it is about sustaining them. There are many things you can reach temporarily, through effort, through luck, through timing, but not everything you reach can be maintained without the right foundation. And without that foundation, what you gain can quickly become unstable. There are opportunities that look like progress on the surface, but carry hidden demands. Demands on your discipline, on your emotional control, on your ability to handle pressure, responsibility, and change. And if those inner structures are not yet stable, the opportunity can become overwhelming, not because it is too much, but because it arrived too soon. This is why life does not always give you access the moment you feel ready. Because feeling ready and being ready are not always the same. Feeling ready often comes from desire, from motivation, from wanting change, but true readiness is quieter. It is built through consistency, through internal alignment, through the ability to remain stable even when circumstances shift. And this kind of readiness cannot be rushed. It develops over time, through experience, through reflection, through the quiet adjustments that happen when you are not focused on outcomes, but on understanding. There is also something important about how instability shows itself. It is not always obvious. It does not always appear as a clear weakness. Sometimes it is subtle. It shows in how you react under pressure, in how quickly your emotions shift when things do not go as expected, in how much external validation influences your sense of self, in how you handle uncertainty. These are the foundations that determine whether you can sustain what you receive. And if these foundations are not yet stable, opening certain doors too early can create more harm than growth. Because instead of supporting your development, the experience can destabilize you. It can reinforce patterns you are still trying to outgrow. It can create stress that overwhelms your current capacity. And in that sense, the closed door is not a denial. It is protection, not from the opportunity itself, but from the version of you that is not yet ready to hold it. There is also a deeper layer to this. Sometimes what you are asking for requires a different version of you, not a completely different person, but a more developed one, someone with greater awareness, greater emotional stability, greater clarity about what truly matters. And until that version begins to form, access remains limited. Not because you are being judged, but because the alignment is not yet complete. There is also something important about how this process shapes your patience. When you begin to understand that closed doors are not always rejection, your relationship with waiting changes. You become less reactive, less focused on forcing outcomes, more willing to invest in your internal development, because you begin to see that what you are building within yourself is directly connected to what becomes available to you. This creates a different kind of motivation, not driven by urgency, but by alignment. You are not trying to reach something as quickly as possible. You are working to become someone who can sustain it when it arrives. And this shift is important because it changes the direction of your effort, from external chasing to internal strengthening. There is also a connection between this and trust. When doors remain closed, it can challenge your belief in your path. It can make you question whether you are moving in the right direction, whether what you are working toward is even meant for you. But when you begin to understand the gatekeeping nature of growth, something shifts. You start to see that the delay may not be about the destination, but about the preparation. That the path is still valid, but the timing requires deeper alignment. And this understanding allows you to remain committed without becoming frustrated, to continue growing without feeling rejected. There is also something important about how this affects your sense of self-worth. When you interpret closed doors as failure, it can lead to self-doubt, to questioning your ability, your value, your direction. But when you see them as part of the process, your perspective changes. You no longer see yourself as lacking. You see yourself as developing, as being in a phase of preparation. And this creates a healthier relationship with your growth, because it is not based on immediate results, it is based on continuous development. There is also a deeper sense of responsibility that comes with this understanding. Because if access is connected to internal stability, then your focus shifts. You begin to pay more attention to your habits, your thoughts, your emotional patterns. You become more aware of what needs to be strengthened, what needs to be adjusted. And this awareness leads to intentional growth, growth that is not random but directed. aligned with the kind of life you want to sustain. There is also something important about how this process refines your desires, because as you grow internally, your understanding of what you truly want begins to change. Some desires fade, others become clearer, more defined, more aligned with your deeper values. And this refinement ensures that when doors do open, they lead to experiences that truly fit your life. Not just what you thought you wanted before. There is also a connection between this and discipline. Because building a stable foundation requires consistency. It requires showing up even when there is no immediate reward, even when progress is not visible, even when doors remain closed. And this consistency strengthens your ability to handle what comes next, because you are not relying on external motivation. You are guided by internal commitment. There is also something important about how this understanding changes your relationship with opportunity. You begin to see that not every opportunity needs to be taken immediately. That timing matters, that readiness matters, and this allows you to be more selective, more intentional, more aligned in your choices. There is also a deeper sense of peace that comes from this, because you are no longer constantly trying to force doors open. You are allowing them to open when the alignment is right, and this reduces pressure, reduces frustration, creates a more balanced experience. There is also something important about how this process builds resilience, because each closed door becomes a moment of learning, of reflection, of adjustment, and over time, this strengthens your ability to handle setbacks, to remain steady, to continue moving forward without losing your sense of direction. There is also a connection between this and clarity, because when doors do open after a period of preparation, they feel different. They feel aligned, natural, not forced, and this clarity confirms that the process was necessary, that the waiting had purpose, that the preparation created a better outcome. There is also something important about how this affects your long-term growth. Because when you build a strong foundation, the progress you make is more stable, more sustainable, less likely to collapse under pressure, and this creates a different kind of success, one that is not temporary, one that is built on alignment. There is also a deeper layer to this, the understanding that life is not trying to withhold from you. It is trying to match you with what you can sustain, to ensure that when something enters your life, it supports your growth rather than disrupts it. And when you begin to see it this way, something changes. The frustration begins to fade. The need to force outcomes begins to soften. And in its place, there is patience. A quiet willingness to grow into what you are asking for. To become ready, not just eager. To build the kind of stability that allows you to hold what you receive. And when you reach that point, something becomes clear. The doors were never closed against you, they were closed for you. Until the moment came when your inner foundation was strong enough to walk through and remain standing on the other side. And as that understanding settles in, another quiet truth begins to surface. Because it is one thing to accept that doors may stay closed until you are ready, but it is another thing entirely to face the moments when you were certain you were ready, certain you were right, certain the path ahead was clear, and still, something slows you down. Not because you lacked effort, not because you lacked belief, but because something deeper was not aligned. There is a kind of confidence that feels strong on the surface. It feels convincing. It feels certain. It tells you that this is the right move, that this is the right direction, that everything will work out if you just keep going. And when you feel this, it becomes easy to commit fully, to invest your time, your energy, your focus, to move forward without hesitation. But not all confidence comes from clarity. Some confidence comes from familiarity, from patterns you have repeated, from beliefs you have carried for a long time, from the need to feel certain, even when something deeper is unclear. And this is where something subtle begins to happen. Because when your certainty is built on something that is not fully aligned, life does not always confront it directly. It does not always break it apart all at once. Instead, it introduces delay, a quiet slowing down, a resistance that does not match your level of effort, a lack of response where you expected, progress. And this is where the tension begins, because your confidence tells you to keep going. But the experience does not confirm it. You move forward, but things do not move with you. You try again, but the outcome remains the same. And slowly, the certainty begins to feel less stable. At first, the mind resists this. It tries to push harder, to adjust the strategy, to find ways to make things work. Because it believes that the path is right, that the issue is simply execution. But over time, something deeper begins to shift. Because repeated delay creates space. Space for reflection, space for questioning, space for awareness to rise beyond the surface of confidence. And in that space, something becomes visible. Not immediately, not all at once, but gradually. The realization that the path you were certain about may not fully align with who you are becoming. This realization is not always comfortable, because it challenges your previous belief. It asks you to reconsider something you have invested in. It asks you to let go of the idea that certainty always equals truth. But this is where growth begins, because confidence without awareness can lead you in directions that feel right, but do not support your deeper development. There is also something important about how misplaced certainty forms. It often begins with a partial understanding. You see a path that seems to match your goals. You feel drawn to it. You believe it will lead to something meaningful. And based on that, you commit. But at that point, your understanding is limited. You do not yet see the full picture. You do not yet understand all the implications. You are responding to what is visible, and this is natural because no one begins with complete clarity. But as you move forward, new information becomes available, new experiences, new insights, new perspectives. And these begin to reveal aspects of the path that were not visible before. Sometimes they confirm your direction, but other times they challenge it. They show you that something does not fit as well as you thought, that something feels off, even if you cannot fully explain it. And this is where delay plays an important role, because without it, you might continue moving forward without noticing these signals. You might push through, driven by your initial confidence. And by the time the misalignment becomes clear, you may be deeply invested, making it more difficult to change direction. But delay interrupts this. It slows down your movement. It reduces the momentum. It creates space for you to see more clearly, to notice what you may have overlooked, to question what you previously accepted without doubt. There is also something important about how this affects your sense of identity. When you are confident in a path, it can become part of how you see yourself. You begin to associate your direction with who you are. You define yourself through it. And when that path is disrupted, it can feel like a loss of identity, like something is being taken away. But in reality, what is being adjusted is not your identity, but your alignment. You are being guided toward a version of yourself that is more accurate, more connected to your deeper values, more stable in the long term. There is also a connection between misplaced certainty and emotional attachment, because the more certain you feel, the more attached you may become. You invest more, you expect more. You rely on the outcome to validate your belief, and this attachment makes it harder to step back, to question, to consider alternative paths. But delay softens this attachment. It reduces the intensity. It creates distance between you and the outcome. And in that distance, you gain perspective. You begin to see things more objectively, more clearly, without the same level of emotional influence. There is also something important about how this process builds humility, not as weakness, but as openness, a willingness to recognize that you do not always have the full picture, that your understanding can evolve, that your direction can change. And this humility allows you to adapt, to adjust your path without feeling like you have failed, to grow without being limited by previous beliefs. There is also a deeper sense of intelligence in how delay interacts with certainty. It does not force you to change. It does not remove your choice. It simply slows things down enough for awareness to catch up, for understanding to deepen, for clarity to emerge naturally. And this makes the shift more stable, because it is not imposed, it is realized. There is also something important about how this affects your decision-making. When you recognize that certainty can sometimes be misplaced, you become more reflective, more thoughtful, less driven by immediate confidence, more guided by ongoing awareness, and this leads to better decisions, decisions that are not only based on what feels right in the moment, but on what continues to feel aligned over time. There is also a connection between this and trust. Trust, not only in life, but in your ability to adapt, to change direction when needed, to refine your understanding, without losing your sense of self. And this trust creates flexibility, because you are not rigidly attached to a single path. You are open to evolution, to growth, to new directions that may better fit your life. There is also something important about how this process protects your long-term well-being, because moving forward with misplaced certainty can lead to outcomes that are difficult to sustain, outcomes that create stress, that require constant adjustment, that pull you away from your natural alignment. But when delay interrupts this, it gives you the opportunity to adjust before reaching that point, to choose a path that is more stable, more supportive, more aligned with who you are becoming. There is also a deeper sense of clarity that emerges from this, because when you move through uncertainty, when your previous certainty is challenged, you begin to see more deeply, to understand not just what you want, but why you want it, to recognize what truly matters to you. And this clarity becomes a stronger guide than initial confidence, because it is built on experience, on reflection, on a deeper understanding of yourself. There is also something important about how this affects your relationship with progress, because when certainty is disrupted, progress may not look linear. It may involve stepping back, reconsidering, changing direction, and this can feel like regression, but in reality, it is refinement, a process of aligning your path more accurately, and this leads to more meaningful progress, because it is not based on moving quickly, but on moving correctly. There is also a connection between this and resilience, because navigating these shifts requires strength, the ability to let go of previous beliefs, to remain open, to continue moving forward even when the path is not fully clear. And this builds a deeper kind of resilience, one that is not dependent on certainty, but on adaptability. There is also something important about how this process shapes your future confidence, because once you have experienced misplaced certainty and adjusted through it, your confidence becomes more grounded, more stable, less reactive. It is no longer based only on initial feeling, but on ongoing alignment, and this makes it stronger, more reliable. There is also a deeper sense of peace that comes from this, because you are no longer trying to force your way forward based on what you once believed. You are allowing your understanding to evolve, your path to adjust, your direction to become clearer over time. And this reduces internal conflict, creates a more balanced experience. There is also something important about how this understanding changes your perspective on delay itself. You no longer see it as something that is holding you back. You begin to see it as something that is helping you see more clearly, to refine your direction, to align more deeply with your path. And when you reach this point, something becomes clear. Not every delay is about slowing you down. Some delays are about correcting your direction, gently disrupting the certainty that would have led you away from what truly fits your life. And when you begin to trust this, even slightly, your experience changes. You become less rigid, less attached to being right, more open to being aligned. And in that openness, there is growth, a deeper understanding of yourself, of your path, of the difference between what feels certain and what is truly right. And that understanding becomes your guide moving forward. And now something becomes clear in a way it never has before. What you once called delay was never empty. It was never random. It was never life working against you. It was life slowing you down when your mind was rushing, redirecting you when your path was misaligned, protecting you when your desires were not yet stable, and preparing you in ways you could not see. Every pause had purpose. Every interruption carried meaning. Every closed door was not rejection, but quiet protection. You were not being denied. You were being guided away from what would disturb your peace. Guided toward what you can actually sustain. Guided into becoming someone who no longer depends on outcomes to feel whole. And maybe now, when you look back, certain things begin to make sense. The timing that once felt wrong, the opportunities that slipped away, the paths that suddenly stopped. What if none of it was a mistake? What if it was all protection? If something in this shifted the way you see your life, take a moment and share it. What is one delay you once resented that you now realize may have protected you? Drop it in the comments. Someone reading it might finally understand their own story. And if you're ready to see life differently, to think deeper, and to move with clarity instead of pressure, subscribe to the channel, because this is where you learn to trust what you cannot yet see and become unshaken by what you once feared.